This is Atomic Shinobi and today I am going to narrate first part of What If Naruto Left the Village After the War. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
The war that had started 10 years earlier was finally over, and the last member of the Akatsuki was dead. The blonde shinobi had returned to the Leaf without any fanfare. Instead, when he returned from a mission, he was met with the same hateful eyes that had always met him. Today was no exception. He had once again risked his life for the place he called home, only to have his efforts met with contempt. The blonde, however, didn't care much about the villagers' sentiments. He had long since stopped giving a damn about their opinion of him. Actually, aside from those few priceless souls he called friends, he hadn't genuinely cared for anyone or anything in years. Naruto could clearly hear people whispering as he moved through Konohagakure's streets. For the blonde, it was nothing new. Why did he come back? Don't get too close to him or you'll be killed. Why won't he just die and leave us in peace? Some of the villagers had wanted him kicked out of their lives since he was a young boy. A wish that he had previously refused to grant. Tsunade congratulated the young man in front of her, saying, "Well done, Naruto. Jiraiya would be proud." The older woman was surprised when Naruto said, "Thank you Hokage-sama." She teased the young man in front of her, saying, "What, don't tell me that your fight with Pain knocked some respect into you?" In order to avoid giving her any cause for concern, he stayed respectfully silent. The fifth questioned, "Is there something wrong Naruto, you don't seem yourself?" He gave a half-hearted response, "I'm just tired." Tsunade decided to ask him for an explanation since she could tell that he was experiencing more than just plain exhaustion. "Are you sure? You look as though there's something else you want to talk about?" He had been taken aback by the Hokages, and before he spoke, he briefly wondered if he should tell her. "I'm tired Ba-chan. I'm tired of serving a village that would rather see me dead than come home safely. I'm tired of pretending that it doesn't hurt every time someone puts me down. I'm tired of being hated and despised just because of what I am. I'm tired of lying to you, my friends, and epically myself. I'm just tired," Naruto said as he released every grudge that he had been harboring. "I'm sure you're overreacting, no one despises you. Sure you're annoying at times and..." Naruto reluctantly interrupted the Hokage, saying, "They said they wished that I had died, that they would rather I had never come back to the village. I'm tired of being where I'm not wanted. With the Akatsuki finished and Sasuke safely home, there is nothing left for me to accomplish here." He ran forward. "You can't be serious. How could you ever think of leaving? What about your dream of becoming Hokage? Are you just going to give that up, and what about your friends? Are you going to abandon them just because of what a few ignorant people say behind your back?" she asked. He turned his head away from her. He heard the hurt in her voice and didn't want to see it in her eyes. "We both know that neither the elders or civilian council would ever allow me to become Hokage, and my friends will be my friends regardless of if I stay or go. Believe me Tsunade when I say that I have thought about this for a long time, and after considering everything there simply isn't a good enough reason for me to remain in Konohagakure. So I'm asking for your permission to leave. But regardless of what you say, I'm leaving," Naruto told Tsunade as she stared at him. In the hopes that he would decide to stay in the village rather than attempt to fight his way out, the fifth questioned, "And what if I say no, brat? What if I summon the Anbu and have you placed under arrest? What then Naruto? I would hope that you wouldn't do that. The last thing I want to do is to leave the only home I have ever known with the blood of its people on my hands," he simply replied. Tsunade was taken aback by his answer. Tsunade could tell by looking at the man in front of her how much he had changed in the last few years. Naruto's training alone would make him formidable, but with the Nine Tails' power, he would be practically unstoppable. She could not just let him leave the village, even though she still hated to see him give up on his dreams. As Tsunade removed a flask of sake from its hiding place, she inquired, "Are you asking for a mission or saying goodbye?" Naruto said, "What's the difference?" without turning to face the woman he regarded as family. Before she turned to face the village, a tiny smile appeared on her lips as she enjoyed how straightforward his question was. "Well, a mission leaves open the possibility that you might come back someday. The other means that you are turning away from us forever," the Hokage started out. "If I send you on a mission, then you are still a part of this village, but if you just leave, then I would have no choice but to declare you a rouge and send hunters to bring you back." Naruto was intelligent and understood what Tsunade was attempting to accomplish for him, despite what many people thought of him. While observing her in the window's reflection, Naruto declared, "Then I am formally requesting a mission Hokage-sama." "Very well. Naruto Uzumaki, your mission is to search the world for the place where you belong. However, I want you to promise me something Naruto. Should you grow weary of your journey or your heart begins to long for the familiar sights of home, then you are to return as soon as you can." Tsunade said as she looked at the young man in front of her. Naruto answered, "It's a promise, my lady." Then he turned to leave the fifth alone with her memories and flask. Tsunade observed the residents of Konoha going about their everyday lives without realizing the toll that their narrow-minded prejudice had taken on the community. She was compelled to feel sorry for the residents of Leaf. She was obviously aware of the reason why people were afraid of Naruto. The boy with the demon fox sealed inside him was well known to the older generation despite the third's decree. Talking about the Nine Tails and the fact that Naruto was its host was illegal. That was taken care of by the third. However, even though the elder generation had followed the decree exactly, they permitted their animosity toward Naruto to taint their children's perception of him. The outcome was clear. Naruto had been alone and tortured for the majority of his childhood. For all the Jinchuriki, this was their fate. Tsunade didn't hold Naruto responsible for his departure. She realized that anyone would suffer from being hated for the rest of their life. Naruto had become the hyperactive ninja of Konoha in order to deal with it in the only way he could. He had attracted attention in some way by doing this, albeit not always in a good way. Naruto eventually gained the respect of many of his fellow ninjas in spite of all the obstacles that stood in his way. His devotion to his friends and village was undeniable to those who knew him best. Tsunade held Naruto accountable for leaving his beloved people behind in order to find a way to continue without him, not for his departure. A knock interrupted the fifth's silent tirade. "Damn brat. You just up and leave without a word to anyone and expect me to break the news. I swear if you ever do come back I'm going to personally put you in the hospital for a week." Miyoko peered into the Hokage's office and said, "Lady Tsunade, the teams you requested are here." The young woman who was working as her assistant was silently cursed by Tsunade. Miyoko would never be able to replace Shizune, even with her effectiveness in the position and her kind and compassionate disposition. Tsunade took her usual place at her desk and gave the order, "Very well, please send them in, and also I want you to arrange a meeting of the village council for this afternoon." As she opened the door fully to the teams that were waiting, Miyoko quickly responded, "Yes, Tsunade. Sama." One by one, Kakashi, Guy, Kurenai, and Asuma entered, squeezing past the Hokage's support squads. "I've summoned you all because I have some news I think you need to hear," Tsunade said. Sakura reluctantly interrupted, "Pardon me, Lady Tsunade, but shouldn't we wait for Naruto? I know he just got back from his battle with Pain, but I'm sure he'd want to be here if you have a mission for us." Tsunade gave her student a sorrowful glance before continuing. "What I have called you here for concerns Naruto. I spoke with him last night at some length about something that occurred after he returned to the village. It seems that Naruto was reminded of how many in the village feel towards him." "I don't understand, what do you mean by how they feel towards him?" Neji responded. Tsunade was aware that the meeting would surely result in this and that one of the Leaf's greatest secrets would need to be revealed to his friends in order for them to fully comprehend why Naruto had left. As you all know, Naruto has always been considered somewhat of an outcast within the village. The fifth episode started. What you don't know is why. But before I continue, I need you to understand that what I am about to tell you is classified S level and not to be spoken of outside this room. Tsunade told the assembled ninja. You are all familiar with the tale of the fourth Hokage defeating the Nine Tails at the expense of his own life. While it is true that the fourth fought and vanquished the demon, he was unable to destroy it, so he was compelled to seal the fox's spirit inside a living person in order to protect the village. He selected a newborn boy to be his vassal, and he chose Naruto. Since he would be the only thing separating the village from the Nine Tails' wrath for the rest of his life, he asked the village to treat Naruto as a hero as he was dying. The third tried his best to ensure that the fourth's final request was fulfilled, but people refused to see Naruto as anything other than the demon, and while many wanted and called for Naruto's execution, the more compassionate among them asked that he be exiled from the village. Tsunade concluded her speech to the group by saying, even though the people upheld the spirit of the third's order, the hatred in their hearts remained and over time colored their children's opinion of Naruto. This meant that any hope for a normal childhood was all but gone. He did this in an attempt to give Naruto a normal life by placing him under the protection of the Anbu and enforcing the rule that no one was to ever discuss Naruto's connection to the Nine Tails. As the assembled ninja waited to see if the Hokage had anything more to tell them, the room was silent for a short while. So, Shikamaru asked languidly, Is that it? Is that it? All you can say after I reveal one of the Leaf's best kept secrets is that it? Tsunade gave the slacker ninja a heated response. Lady Tsunade, I'm positive Shikamaru didn't mean any offense, but the fact remains that you have only validated our collective suspicions. In an attempt to soothe the fifth, Neji offered. And just how did you all start to suspect Naruto in the first place? Kakashi inquired. Please, we do communicate with each other and have all gone on missions with him. The man actually engaged in combat and defeated Pain, Sasuke, Orochimaru, and Gaara. When he gets hurt, he's down for a day or two and acts as if nothing happened. He has also done things that would have killed anyone else. All of that is staring us in the face right now. Did you think we wouldn't notice? Shikamaru clarified. I understand. Naruto has a tendency to defy reason. I guess the Nine Tails would be the obvious choice if you tried to make sense of it in light of the Leaf's past. We should have prevented him from enrolling in the academy and training to become a ninja, Kurenai reasoned, if the village had truly wished to keep Naruto and the fox a secret. It's absurd. Naruto is a fantastic ninja who has been given the ability to age. Guy asked, what right would we have had to deny him the opportunity to become a ninja? Pardon me, but aren't we straying from the main topic? In an attempt to remind the group of why they had been called to the Hokage's office, Hinata said softly, Lady Tsunade said she had something important to tell us concerning Naruto. Hinata, you're absolutely correct. I told you about Naruto and the fox because some of the villagers expressed to him their desire for him to have died in the last battle. Naruto concluded that leaving the village was the best course of action after hearing for years how much they despised him and wished for his death, Tsunade explained. He what? I'll kill that idiot, Sakura roared. Everyone was in disbelief over the news they had just heard. For a while, nobody spoke, as everyone tried to figure out how their friend could have been in so much pain without anyone noticing. Why didn't you stop Naruto if he told you he was going to leave? Lady Tsunade, Tenten questioned the elderly lady. I attempted to halt him. Even worse, I threatened to call the Anbu and have him arrested. But even that didn't make him reconsider. He would still be gone if I had carried out my plan, whether he had killed the Anbu or been killed by them. So I offered him something. I gave him a mission and told him to find his place in the world so that I wouldn't have to declare him a Rouge Ninja. He's on an extended mission, but officially he's still with the Leaf, Tsunade explained, defending her actions. All right, he's out there by himself, searching for an unknown object. What should we do about it, then? Kiba inquired. We bring back the fool. Sakura slammed her hand against Tsunade's desk and uttered those words. Sakura, that won't work. Something was lacking in Naruto's life here, so he left. Nothing will change until he discovers what he's missing, Ino said in an attempt to reassure her friend. Ino is correct. Whatever Naruto is looking for, he must locate it on his own. We'll be there if he needs us, but for now, we'll just have to wait, Tsunade told the group. I believe it would be best if we kept this to ourselves for the time being. Before dismissing the assembled ninja to resume their daily activities, the fifth said, I'm sure that the villagers will figure it out for themselves soon enough. Excuse me, Lady Tsunade. Could I talk to you for a minute? Hinata inquired quietly. Hinata, of course. How can I assist you? Tsunade answered. In order to assist Naruto, I would like to ask you for a favor, not for myself. Please grant me permission to leave the village so that I can locate Naruto and accompany him on his mission. He needs a companion because he is out there by himself. So, before you make a decision, please think about what I have to say, Hinata begged the fifth. Excuse me, Lady Tsunade. Could I talk to you for a minute? Hinata inquired quietly. Hinata, of course. How can I assist you? Tsunade answered. In order to assist Naruto, I would like to ask you for a favor, not for myself. Please grant me permission to leave the village so that I can locate Naruto and accompany him on his mission. He needs a companion because he is out there by himself. So, before you make a decision, please think about what I have to say, Hinata begged the fifth. Tsunade mumbled to herself in silence as she tried to keep up the appearance of composure after hearing Hinata's request. All right, Hinata, I'll listen to you, but I won't make any promises. Oh, and I'll have your ass removed from the Anbu Hall before you blink if I even suspect that you might change your mind. Agreed, Tsunade said sharply. As she got ready to present her case to the Hokage, Hinata came back and said, agreed. But I have a question before you start. Tsunade purposefully inquired, are you doing this because he is your friend, or is there another reason I should know about? Hinata merely replied, I love him, unable to control the flush that was rushing to her cheeks. Is he feeling the same way? Tsunade inquired. He's not sure. I've never been brave enough to tell him. However, whether he does or does not is irrelevant. Hinata answered, I can't just let him walk away from everything and everyone he has ever cared about. All that matters is that I love him. If I allow you to pursue him, what are your plans? Tsunade started, are you just going to declare your love for him and hope for the best, hoping that your love will be enough to get him back? No, ma'am. I have no intention of sharing my feelings with him. He doesn't need that extra burden right now, that would be too much. To keep him from being alone. I simply want to be there for him. I was left alone because I didn't live up to others' expectations, just as Naruto was left alone because of what was inside of him. I at least owe him that much, so I know I can help him. Hinata spoke passionately, her lavender eyes threatening to well up with tears. He has done so much for me without ever knowing, and it's time I repaid his kindness. You are not credible to me. You are keeping me in the dark about something else. What on earth could he have done to make you sacrifice everything you know in order to keep him from being alone? Tsunade almost yelled at the woman in front of her, unless you want me to reject your request right here and now, you will tell me everything. Hearing the Hokage's demand made Hinata pale. She had hoped that she wouldn't have to divulge everything she had kept hidden for so long, but she would gladly give her soul if it meant that she would have the only chance to assist Naruto in any way. Alright, Lady Tsunade. I apologize for not being honest with you earlier. I want to go on this mission for the same reason that I have never expressed my feelings to Naruto. Hinata whispered, Naruto owns my life. Explain. As she watched a visibly anxious Hinata, Tsunade questioned, what do you mean your life belongs to Naruto? People have always thought I'm weak. Despite being my father's eldest child, I will not inherit his position. My sister Hanabi will have that privilege. According to my father, I serve no purpose in the clan. I am not strong enough to take charge of it, and my ninja abilities are not sufficiently developed to make me much more than a foot soldier. Given how I am viewed by the clan, a political marriage is unlikely, but it is a possibility. My father and my clan have always treated me with contempt, as far as I can recall. My father all but stopped teaching me our family's traditional fighting style when it became clear that I had not inherited the innate skill that the majority of the main house members possessed. But he couldn't just let me completely stop training as a ninja in order to preserve his honor. In order to achieve this, Kurenai's sensei was assigned to mentor me. He gave her the straightforward directive to train me as best she could. He didn't think I was going to succeed in any way. During my first few months with Kurenai, I worked to learn the fundamentals of chakra control and self-defense. But anything more than that seemed out of my grasp. She never gave up on me, though, to her credit. Then came the day my father called on me. After 3 months of instruction, Kurenai wanted to know if I had improved. I was told to spar with Hanabi to see how well I could do. Hanabi, like Neji, is naturally skilled at the gentle fist style, though. Our game was over in a flash. I was fully reminded of my shortcomings in the eyes of the clan, and father's disappointment was evident. Finally pausing to think about whether or not to continue her story, Hinata explained. Isn't there more out there? Tsunade inquired in an attempt to persuade the young lady in front of her to go on. Hinata braced herself to relive one of the darkest times of her childhood because she felt that Tsunade was a person she could really trust with her secret. I wandered around the training grounds after departing the Hyuga compound. I was overcome with feelings of despair and hopelessness. I was burdened by the years of being told I was a failure and would never amount to anything. So much so that I decided that it would be better to die right then and there rather than live on. I made the hasty decision to die. I didn't want to risk being stopped or failing at the attempt and making my family endure the ensuing humiliation. I reasoned that the best location to complete it would be the training grounds. But Naruto was there when I got there. He was working feverishly to make a successful clone. He must have failed a dozen times to produce a good clone in the brief time I saw him. But he kept trying after every setback. I'm not sure how long it had been before he finally passed out from chakra exhaustion, and I went to check on him. When he didn't seem to be improving, I recall asking him why he was still trying so hard. After giving me a long look, he smiled contagiously and remarked, no one succeeds the first time they try something new. I would never improve if I gave up trying because I didn't succeed. Failure should not be feared, rather, it should be conquered. It never occurred to me that failure could serve as a catalyst for growth and improvement. I've always been taught that failing is something to be avoided and that people who fail are weak and unworthy. With just a few words, Naruto transformed my life and saved it. Naruto took over my life at that point. I felt better about myself after talking to him than I had previously, and I gradually started to get better. I've never discussed what transpired that day with anyone. It still terrifies me that I almost threw everything away. Since then, my only objective has been to get stronger so that I can eventually prove to him that I am the kind of person he would want to walk with. I have to go with him now because of this. As Hinata waited for Tsunade's decision, she concluded, why am I requesting your permission to go to him, to be with him? The fifth would never have thought that the same Hinata she had come to know would have ever thought of taking her own life, but here she was saying it. Tsunade had listened intently to the young woman in front of her, and she wasn't sure if she should be praising or feeling sorry for her because the young woman had endured so much because of events that were out of her control. But if nothing else, Hinata's story showed Tsunade just how much of an impact Naruto can have on someone's life without them ever realizing it, since he immediately prevented her from making a mistake. I'm either insane or intoxicated, but I've already made up my mind. I've given you instructions, Hinata Hyuga, to support Naruto Uzumaki on his current mission until you're called back or his mission is finished. I'll give you what I know about his current location even though I don't have precise information. At the beginning of this morning, he was heading toward Suna. He was heading toward the village hidden in the sand, according to an Anbu patrol team near the border. He is thought to be en route to their Cage's meeting. You might be able to accompany him there if this is true. You must leave right away and not tell anyone about your mission. The fifth had just finished when Hinata bowed and hurried out of the office, leaving Tsunade to offer up prayers for her success. Good luck. I'm either insane or intoxicated, but I've already made up my mind. I've given you instructions, Hinata Hyuga, to support Naruto Uzumaki on his current mission until you're called back or his mission is finished. I'll give you what I know about his current location even though I don't have precise information. At the beginning of this morning, he was heading toward Suna. He was heading toward the village hidden in the sand, according to an Anbu patrol team near the border. He is thought to be en route to their Cage's meeting. You might be able to accompany him there if this is true. You must leave right away and not tell anyone about your mission. The fifth had just finished when Hinata bowed and hurried out of the office, leaving Tsunade to offer up prayers for her success. Good luck. It would normally take 3 days to get from Konoha to Suna, but if Tsunade's information was accurate, then Naruto must have been traveling at top speed to have nearly reached the border. Hinata knew full well that, given the blonde's speed and stamina, Suna was just one of many possible directions he could have traveled from a given point along the border. But the Anbu's report was her only clue as to which direction Naruto had traveled, and she was not going to let it go by. When the sun started to set, Hinata had almost arrived at the Fire Country border after traveling at full speed for the majority of the day. Having used up the majority of her chakra reserves, she made the sensible decision to camp for the night. Contrary to what most people believed, Hinata was incredibly efficient when it came to practical matters. She had set up her campsite and was about to begin preparing her evening meal in less than 30 minutes when she noticed movement from the trees above. She immediately jumped to her feet and activated her Byakugan, ready to defend herself from any enemy that might be approaching. It is the ninja's way to wait for the best opportunity to attack your opponent. Any sudden movement could be the signal that would end your life. Hinata was well aware of this lesson and was not going to be an example. She quickly realized that she was facing just one opponent by focusing all of her attention on the area around her, but the Kunoichi were not comforted by this information because she had no idea of their intentions or level of skill. Her heart started racing, either out of excitement or fear, though the Hyuga would not say which if pressed. She knew deep down that it was fear. Hinata's mind raced through years of training trying to think of any scenario that might give her an advantage under the current circumstances. She could feel the approaching person drawing closer. Whoever it was, their chakra was enormous, seemingly endless, and it felt like the weight of it would crush her at any moment. The one thing that had always been the same in all of her ninja battles was that she had never been alone. Sure, her allies had not always been by her side, but they had always been nearby to help her if necessary. This time, though, she was alone. There would be no last-minute daring rescues or reinforcements. Whatever happened would happen. She would either win or lose, live or die, and she could not afford to die. The young woman knew she could die, but the possibility that death would embrace her would not stop her from trying. She would face whatever was ahead with her eyes wide open, and yes, she was feeling fear. Fear of what might never be. Her opponent was in front of her, and fate would decide the rest. Hi, Hinata. Way out here, what are you doing? As he emerged from behind a tree to stand in front of the battle. Ready, Hyuga, Naruto exclaimed. You're on some sort of mission. No. Naruto? That was all Hinata could say before darkness overtook her because she was so confused. Never again. As he approached the unconscious woman to check on her, Naruto humped. She had found Naruto, or rather he had found her, and Hinata grudgingly woke up from the dream she was having. She knew it had to be a dream because he was reportedly heading toward Suna and she couldn't have passed him in her pursuit, but it had seemed so real. How do you like your fish, Hinata? Naruto pulled the young woman out of her rambling thoughts and said, if you want, I can grill it or I have a pan so I could fry it. Nah. Ru. 2. Are you present? However, how? As Hinata watched Naruto get ready to cook his catch, she asked quickly, there's no way I could have passed you. Naruto had been busy gathering the ingredients he would need to cook with, so he had not been particularly interested in the girl until Hinata's final statement caught his attention. Well, why were you attempting to locate me and how did you know I had left the village? He asked his companion, who was still a little confused. Lady Tsunade called a meeting with all of your friends this morning and gave them an explanation for your departure. Hinata explained conveniently, omitting the fact that she had essentially pleaded with the Hokage to pursue him. She and I spoke after that, and she decided that you might need some backup on your mission, so I was sent to reinforce you. How was that possible for her? I don't know how long this will take. It might take years. I may never go back to the village again, I told Grandma. Therefore, why in the world would she do something so crazy as send someone out to join me? In an attempt to explain to Hinata what she had been told to do, Naruto spoke passionately. Don't worry, Naruto. When I agreed to the mission, I knew what it would entail. In addition, I have instructed you to be reinforced until you finish your mission or I am called upon. You see, I might get a call back at any time. But until then, if you don't mind, I'll just help you out however I can, Hinata said, stepping in to take over the night's cooking responsibilities. As she went out of her way, Naruto couldn't help but wonder why someone he hardly knew, Sakura, perhaps even Shikamaru, would be willing to sacrifice so much for him, but Hinata, whom he had never thought to care that much about, though he had known her since their academy days, they had never been close in any way. She had always been one of the few people in the village who had accepted him, one of the few people he could call a friend. Hey, Hinata. Aside from orders, why did you consent if Tsunade gave you all the details? As he watched her plate the grilled fish, he asked quietly. Naruto thought that perhaps Hinata had not heard his question, but she never slowed down in her work, going on almost as if she had. Then, she turned to face him and said, in a voice that Naruto had never heard the Hyuga use before, it had to be me because my life is yours. You mentioned that Tsunade had given me a thorough explanation of my reasons for leaving the village, Hinata. If so, what is the reason? Knowing this, why did you accept this mission? Wanting to know why someone he hardly knew would sacrifice so much for him knowing who he was, Naruto asked, knowing everything. This was Naruto, the man who had faced opponents far stronger than himself without hesitation, the man who stood in front of all the bigots and naysayers in the world every day without ever giving in to their hateful words, the man she admired, the person she looked to for strength, the person she knew deep down would change the world one day. Hinata could hear the unsteadiness in Naruto's voice, and for a moment she could have sworn that it was fear that accompanied his words, but that was unthinkable. Then, in what can only be described as a moment of clarity, the clouds of admiration that had for so long obscured her vision briefly parted, allowing Hinata to finally see the real Naruto. He was no longer the person who could do no wrong, nor was he the ideal of perfection that had consumed her every thought. Instead, she could finally see the scared, neglected boy that the world had repeatedly beaten down, and she could finally see the fragile soul that years of heartache and torment had left behind. As she looked into his cerulean eyes, the mask he wore for the world cracked and slowly fell away, revealing the tear-stained face of the man she loved pleading to never be hurt again, and her heart broke. Then, with a renewed resolve to mend Naruto's broken heart coursing through her spirit, Hinata turned to face him and said, "It had to be me because my life is yours," in a voice he had never heard the Hyuga use before. He had not expected to hear that she was there because her life was his, but it was the last thing he had expected her to say. He had expected to hear that she had been the unfortunate one chosen by Tsunade, that she had lost a bet, that she had been the last person to arrive at the meeting, or that she had drawn the short straw. "Hinata, I don't get it. Your life is mine, what do you mean?" With his eyes immediately locked on hers, Naruto asked. Her heart started racing, and she could feel the confidence she had gained slipping away, but she was determined not to let it go now that she had come this close, not after nearly losing him due to the bigotry of the village. It was true that she hadn't intended to tell him this way, that she had wanted to make her confession at a time and place of her choosing, but the die had been cast, and there was no turning back. "My family believes that I am too weak to be of any real use, as you are aware. They never miss a chance to tell me that I'll never amount to anything and that I should just give up." Hinata started to hope Naruto would comprehend her intentions before she was forced to reveal all of her confidential information. "I nearly gave up on my dreams when I was younger because I believed them. I nearly threw everything away because other people's remarks made me doubt myself. However, I did see you training one day. Observing you repeatedly, I saw you get back up and try again after unsuccessful attempts. No one succeeds the first time they try something new, you said when I asked you why you keep trying after so many failures. I'm not sure if you recall that day. I would never improve if I gave up trying because I didn't succeed. Failure should not be feared, rather, it should be conquered. Your words motivated me, Naruto. They made it possible for me to see what others had long been keeping me from seeing. That if I didn't give up because I might trip and fall, I could turn my weakness into strength. You saved my life with your words, and now you have my life. I tried my hardest to train myself after following your example. I wanted to prove myself to you, so I pushed myself to the limit and beyond everything in the hopes that one day I might be as strong as you. My goal was to develop into someone you might want at your side. Naruto, I have witnessed your suffering. I have witnessed how you are treated by others and the burdens you have placed on yourself in an effort to prove yourself to those who despise you. I am aware that you are currently in danger of collapsing under the weight you have placed on yourself. I requested permission from Lady Tsunade to visit in the hopes of relieving some of the burden you have been bearing. I'm aware that I can't handle everything. I would if I could, but perhaps I could ease your load if you allow me to. I'm not particularly noteworthy. I'm not a great healer like Sakura, a fierce fighter like Tenten, or even a stunning person like Ino. However, Hinata told the man she had admired for the majority of her life, I'm here because I believe in you, and that has to count for something. He had never imagined that anything he said or did could affect anyone the way that Hinata described, but here she was, the shy girl he knew so little about, who understood the anguish of his heart as if it were her own. Naruto had been enthralled with Hinata's every word. I'm not quite sure what to say. You have no idea how much what you said means to me. However, that doesn't alter the reason I left. It has no effect on how the people of Konoha perceive me. With his eyes lowered to the ground, Naruto started, my friends may recognize me as Naruto, but the villagers only see me as. Hinata concluded, making Naruto wince a little, the 9 tails. He answered quietly, so Tsunade did tell you everything. Indeed, she told us the whole tale. We all still feel the same way about you, though. Hinata reassured them, you may be the demon's jailer, but you are not the demon. Isn't it? I'm the landlord, not the demon's jailer, and the rent is represented by a chakra. Doesn't using its chakra, when you think about it, also turn me into a demon? Naruto asked, and his response came in the form of a slap that was infused with chakra. I'll only say this once, so pay attention to me now. Naruto Uzumaki is who you are. The 9 tails or any other demon in waiting is not you. It's just chakra, so it doesn't matter if you use the demon's chakra. Power is a means, not an end, and how it is used is up to the individual. You are not evil because you have never abused your position of authority. You wouldn't be evil even if you spent the rest of your life using the 9 tails chakra. I chose to follow Naruto Uzumaki instead of the 9 tails. I followed the man who has gained the respect of both his fellow ninja and myself, who has promised the world that he will one day become Hokage, and who never breaks his word. Before it's too late for me to change my mind, tell me if I made a mistake by following you, the man I firmly believe in. Hinata swore at Naruto, who was staring at the woman in front of him in fear. A slow smile spread across Naruto's formerly sour face as he grasped his injured cheek and said, I apologize, Hinata. His typically upbeat voice started to return, and he said, I know you're right. All right. Oh, and Naruto, I'm sorry I slapped you. I hope you can forgive me. Hinata giggled nervously, because you are the one I'm supposed to look to for encouragement, not the other way around. She inquired. When he moved to stir the dying fire, Naruto retorted, if Sakura taught me anything, it's that sometimes I need a good smack to bring me to my senses, so if you're going to be traveling with me you might want to keep that in mind. Hinata eventually joined him as she started to serve the dinner they had left behind so they could talk. As he ate a piece of grilled fish, Naruto said, oh, and Hinata, from now on I'll be looking to you as well. Though it wasn't exactly the perfect life she had envisioned sharing with him, for the time being it was more than she could have ever hoped for, and to think that none of this would have happened if she hadn't caught up with him earlier made Hinata almost faint at the idea that Naruto might be depending on her for support in the days ahead. You never explained to me how I could catch up with you when you left the village last night, Naruto, Hinata inquired. Well, let's see. Did I not? As you can see, it looks like this. I came across a family heading towards Konoha just as I was ready to cross the border. Naruto explained. I helped them carry their belongings to the gates because their wagon had broken a wheel and they didn't have a spare. I was on my way back when I ran into you. Are you saying that you made it all the way to the border, turned around, went back to village and made it all the way back here in less than 24 hours? Hinata replied with disbelief. Naruto confirmed, yeah, that sounds about right. Hinata told the grinning man, you really are incredible, Naruto. After finishing their meal and putting everything away, the two of them went to bed. However, Naruto was having trouble falling asleep, so he briefly thought about doing some late night training to try to exhaust himself before he found himself staring into a pair of blood-red eyes. The 9 tails booming voice said, so boy, here we are again. Now, what do you want? Naruto questioned the beast that was imprisoned. We were almost destroyed in that last battle, and I've decided that if I want to live, I'd better make sure you do too. I want to present you with an offer because of this. Throughout the thousands of years I have lived, I have acquired jutsu that has been lost to time. For a fee, I'd be happy to teach them to you, the fox said. As he started to leave the demon's cage, Naruto replied, I know your price and there is no way I'm going to break the seal and let you go. You don't get it, boy. Our chakras are far too entwined for me to simply be released at this time. We would both die if we separated now. My mate is what I want in return for my teachings, the nine-tailed fox said to Naruto, who was now shocked and perplexed. As Naruto gazed into the nine-tails' crimson eyes, its thunderous voice exclaimed, so boy we meet once again. Now, Furball, what do you want? Naruto asked the beast in captivity. Anyone observing the scene would have assumed the blonde was crazy for speaking to the demon fox in such a cold-blooded way, but the two had formed a peculiar bond over the years, and while they might never be friends, they were no longer adversaries. I've decided that if I want to live, I had better make sure you do too, because our last battle almost ended us. In order to present you with an offer, I have called you here. I have acquired strong jutsu that would otherwise be lost to history because I have lived for thousands of years. The fox offered in a tone that Naruto almost compared to humility, I would be willing to teach them to you for a price. As he started to leave the demon's cage, Naruto replied, and I suppose your price for imparting this great wisdom would be the breaking of the seal that binds us. The fox looked at Naruto and moaned, are you really this blind to the things around you, boy? It's much too late for either of us to just walk away from the other. Because our chakras are so entwined, you and I will never be free of one another. The nine-tails told the obliging blonde shinobi that any attempt to separate them would result in our deaths. After learning that he would be permanently bound to the demon, Naruto appeared to lose himself in thought, but the truth was that he had neither anticipated nor sought a way to break free from the nine-tails, and for better or worse, the demon's chakra was a source of power that he could use to defend those closest to him. For Naruto, nothing was more significant than that. All right, so what do you hope to gain from instructing me? Naruto refocused his attention on the fox's red eyes and asked. What do you know about spirits and demons, Naruto? Tell me, the fox inquired. This time, Kyuubi spoke his name, something Naruto had not heard him do since the day he had first stood in front of the great beast, and he found himself growing a little kinder to the demon. Naruto gave the best response he could, saying, I only know what they taught us at the academy and what I've learned from the stories I've been told over the years. I understand. As he observed the blonde, the fox groaned, so it seems that you know almost nothing. I need to explain what happened in the past before we can proceed. The fox turned away from Naruto and said, you must comprehend the events of 16 years ago and the reason behind my attack on Konoha. What do you mean that you must clarify? The fourth fought you and sealed you inside me at the expense of his own life after you attacked Konoha, as I already know the story. Naruto angrily interrupted the fox's story before he could finish it, saying, end of story. The fox's strong voice shook the sewer prison as he said, you only know what those with power chose to reveal. Kyuubi calmed his rage and added, there is so much more that happened in the weeks that led up to the attack that was hidden away. As he got to his feet after being knocked back by the fox's outburst, Naruto remained silent, choosing instead to wait and hear what the beast had to say in order to comprehend the significance of the Kyuubi's words. Humans cannot even begin to comprehend the powers that exist in this world. However, they are stupid enough to try to gain control of that power because of their conceit. In an attempt to gain control over their brothers, they will sell their souls to the devil. To rule over 50, they will slaughter 100. Humans refer to my kind as monsters and demons because they want to seize our power and, when they are unable to do so, try to destroy or imprison us. In order to defeat his rival and make those who had abandoned him once more accept him as their leader, a man by the name of Madara Uchiha long ago sought out my power. I'm not sure how long he looked, but eventually we met, and he used his cursed Mangekyo Sharingan to gain control over me. At this point, the fox stopped to consider its own recollections of the past. Madara also tore away something extremely valuable when he took control of me. My only advice was that Madara had to go back into the background after his rival thwarted his plans at the time. But despite his wounds, the bastard vowed to exact revenge on the village that had rejected him. The demon said, that was 16 years ago. Wait, that means that you attacked Konoha because, Naruto said. Because I had to kill people who had done me no wrong because Madara Uchiha, the founder of the Uchiha clan, was filled with resentment and a desire for vengeance. That day, the fourth put himself in danger for his village in order to stop him. Madara withdrew into the shadows once more, and I became bonded to you. One man's desire for power is the only reason anything has happened. You now know why this conflict hasn't ended and why everything has happened. Kyuubi concluded, Madara is still out there, waiting for his chance to finish what he started. I had no idea. Naruto said incredulously, I always just accepted what Iruka and the others told me. It is quite possible that your friends do not know the entire truth since there was only a small number of ninja present at the final battle. The 9 Tails argued. Alright, what comes next? Naruto asked the beast in front of him. You mentioned that you needed to explain about the past, and you have. What do I need to do in order for you to teach me? The fox lowered his head to the ground to get a better look at his host before saying, before I tell you my price you will first need to learn of the nature of spirits and demons. The beings that people refer to as spirits and demons have existed on this planet for a lot longer than you might think. The first ones were given life by Kami, who then tasked them with clearing the path for the others. The younger ones learned the ways of the world from those who were first obeyed. This was carried out until the younger ones were able to support themselves. Once their task was finished, the first ones departed this plane of existence and never came back. Therefore, it was the responsibility of those who came after them to instruct and raise those who would follow the world's ways until their work was completed and they, too, would depart this plane to join those who had come before them. The cycle went on until humanity rose up to take control of the planet. We who continued to practice the old ways attempted to impart our knowledge, but the ancient man was unable to hear us. After growing irate and hostile, he eventually attacked us. Others fled to the higher planes out of fear of human barbarism, while those that humans could reach were killed. However, some decided to remain and make an effort to respect Kami's wishes. Only one person is still free out of the 12 that survived, Kyuubi said sorrowfully. Hold on, 12. I assumed there were only 10 tailed beasts. What became of the others? With excitement, Naruto inquired. Indeed, 10 of those remaining 12 became known as the tailed beast. The final 2 managed to blend in with the creatures of this world and avoid detection by the naked eye. As Kyuubi watched Naruto's eyes light up with comprehension, he responded, as for the others, they took the form of man and passed down their knowledge and power from one generation to the next. Kekkei Genkei, the blonde hardly said anything. Yes. The power that one of my kind passes on to their offspring when we mate with humans is known as Kekkei Genkei. The 9 Tails concluded by rising again to gaze down upon the man in front of him. Those of my kind who joined with humanity came to be called spirits because man saw their power as something otherworldly. I'll tell you my price now, Naruto. Mate. Taking was not limited to those who assumed human form. I also took a mate in the years prior to Madara. My heart aches for her even though it has been almost a century since I last gazed into her eyes. My life revolves around Naruto, our benevolent life partner, and I would do anything to be with her again. Kyuubi bowed its head to Naruto and said, therefore, if you will take me to her, I will teach you everything I know so that we might be together again. And where would I find her if I agreed? Naruto asked in a non-committal manner. In the land of snow, my partner hides. I can still feel her chakra calling to me even though we are separated. Teaching me how to get home, the demon replied. There had never been any explanation given other than the fact that the fox was a demon and that's what demons do, and that was all the people of Konoha needed to know. Naruto had never thought to question why the fox had attacked Konoha or where it had come from in the first place. He had never considered that the creature sealed within him was anything more than a vicious killer. Though Naruto was aware that the fox's statement could have been a lie, there was something in the demon's words that pleaded to be believed, and for better or worse, Naruto was willing to do so. Now, however, he understood. The reason behind one of the darkest chapters in Konoha's history was finally exposed. Black and white is never the only way to live. Everything has both good and evil. As Naruto turned away from the demon and started to return to the outside world, he said, I can't say that I believe everything that you have told me, but I am willing to give you a chance. But if this is a trick, you should know that you won't get a second chance because I'll end it for both of us before I allow you to hurt any of my precious people. As Kyuubi watched Naruto fade away, he responded, I understand. The sound of dripping water reverberated through the mostly empty sewers as the disappearing image of Naruto vanished, seemingly delaying time. You can come out of hiding. Kyuubi turned his eyes to a darkened corner and knowingly called out, I can smell your fear. As his newest visitor stepped forward into the light, the fox never let his eyes wander, and he nearly chuckled when the woman came up, doing her best to suppress the swell of fear inside her so that she could stand confidently in front of him. So tell me, girl, will you leave him now that you've seen me and you can really understand who he is? Will you abandon him, as so many others have done? As he gave her his full attention, the 9 Tails asked. She struggled to find her voice as she tried to say, I've watched you over the years, Kyuubi said, his laugh booming through the sewers as he glared at the woman. I am aware that you think you are in love with him. However, that was prior to. The demon said, that was before I brought you here. She attempted to ask, why DYOU, but was silenced by the fox's low growl. What brought you here? I brought you here for your observation. The fact that you have been informed that something exists is irrelevant. It's not real until you have first-hand experience with it. Now you know that I am a real part of Naruto. Kyuubi clarified, he and I are and will always be one. That cannot change. But why? The woman asked, shedding some of the stutter that had accompanied her earlier fear. I do not hate him, he said again, and the 9 tails grinned at the woman's increasing self-assurance. Because I live inside of him, he has suffered a lot in his life, and I have come to regret that, Kyuubi said. After everything that he has been forced to go through, Naruto deserves to be happy. You deserve to understand what it would really mean to give yourself to him, which is why I brought you here. You have to accept me somehow if you want to love him. But, she started. I brought people here before, including you. Sakura has also appeared in front of me. I sensed her love for him growing, just like you did. However, her heart froze when she realized that being with him would mean accepting me. He will never win her heart, but she will always be his friend. I don't want him to experience that suffering ever again. That's why you're here, Hinata Hyuga, Kyuubi concluded, focusing his red eyes on her once more. Even before I understood what love was, I had a deep affection for Naruto Uzumaki. I only know that I love him. I have no idea when I first realized this or why I feel this way. You asked me if I would leave him if I knew you existed. The answer is straightforward. No, you're not the first to compare me to Sakura. Since she was among the first to publicly embrace him, it's simple to see why he would make such a strong effort to keep her around even after she pushes him away. But if you think he doesn't have her heart, you're mistaken. She loves him just as much as I do, but it's a different kind of love. As she raised her head and met the demon's eyes, Hinata said to the fox. Hinata was unable to read the demon's face. It was up to him to decide whether or not he believed her, but she knew her own heart, and that was enough for her. She would not desert Naruto no matter what the future held for them. Hinata Hyuga, you will be expected to do a lot in the future. I'm going to call you here again soon. As Hinata woke up to the aroma of breakfast and Naruto's lively voice urging her to begin the day, the Kyuubi remarked, at this point, you hold our future in your hands, so I only hope that your deeds will match your words. Men never commit evil with such completeness and joy as when they do it with a strong sense of moral conviction. Madara Uchiha was one such man. As his distaste for the village in front of him deepened, Madara muttered to himself, years ago I tried to protect my clan from the self-righteous bastards in Konoha. I warned them that the day would come when the Uchiha clan would be betrayed by the Leaf, but they refused to listen and cast me aside. It took years, but I made them all pay for doubting me. As he jumped from his perch and raced deeper into the forest, the elder Uchiha boasted, that bastard Sarutobi thought that by getting rid of my people he could protect his precious village from the Uchiha, but he was wrong. So very wrong. 3 more years, just 3 short years and I shall wipe away the stench of the Leaf from the land. Hinata observed Naruto futilely battling the 9 tails' overwhelming power. They started looking for Kyuubi's mate a year ago, and in that time, the demon fulfilled its promise to Naruto. They trained day in and day out, and Naruto gradually started to learn some of the demon's lost jutsu. Naruto still had a long way to go before the fox would teach him more than the fundamentals of the more potent jutsu, even with his progress. As he stalked around his wounded prey, Kyuubi explained, stay down boy, you're strong and determined but your heart is fighting a war your body can't win. Naruto forcibly responded, why? Oh. UTH. Ink that a few lit. La circa. Oots and brewy. S's or go. Ing to keep me d. Own. Before he fainted and vanished from the mindscape. Kyuubi laughed, humph, when will he ever learn? As the enormous beast turned to face the young woman who was approaching. Almost immediately, the routine had started. Every night, Kyuubi taught Naruto a different jutsu while also working on ways to increase Naruto's own chakra reserves. They would keep going until Naruto could no longer go on and had to leave the world. The demon would then converse with Hinata about whatever topic caught its attention or about their own training sessions. As Hinata moved to stand in front of the fox, it asked, why have you never told Naruto that I speak with you? Indeed, Hinata had never disclosed her encounters with the fox to Naruto. After being brought before the demon for the first time, she realized she ought to have told him. Hinata frequently reflected on how she had never told him. After all, she had done nothing wrong, and Naruto didn't blame her for the initial trespass. She reasoned that the fox was at fault and that the truth didn't threaten her. But Hinata was aware that everyone has a different definition of truth, and her own truth was that she had started to look forward to their nightly talks shortly after her first encounter with the demon. She had discovered a confidant in Kyuubi with whom she could discuss her feelings and thoughts regarding the man she had long admired. For better or worse, the 9 Tails simply listened to her and occasionally expressed its own opinions about its host. It never pushed or condemned her. I'm not really sure. I suppose that in a way I'm afraid that he might consider it as a transgression into his private domain. But I guess that I do not want to harm the relationships that have developed over the past year. Hinata replied with integrity. Hinata shuddered a little at the thought of being so easily read when Kyuubi said, "Humph. Your words cannot mask what your heart refuses to conceal. But enough talk of such things. Tonight we will focus on increasing your chakra reserves and overall chakra capacity." Before the young woman could be crushed by its left paw, the demon snapped her out of her reverie. Tsunade stood reading the report she had just received over and over again. The final Sanin appeared to those present to want nothing more than to burrow into the deepest hole she could find and never emerge. Tsunade questioned the Anbu captain, "Are you sure about this information?" The young woman wearing the dove mask replied, "Yes, my lady. I personally verified the information." In the hopes that there was a mistake in the report, the 5th asked, "And you're positive that it was Madara Uchiha and not just someone who resembled him?" "Theirs was no mistake, my lady. The man identified was confirmed to be Madara Uchiha," Dove responded. Tsunade ignored the bowing Anbu and their quiet departure, saying, "Very well, you and your team go and rest yourselves. However, I will have need of you in the near future. Until then, you are dismissed." As Tsunade started to think about her immediate options, she told herself, so the rumors were true. Somehow that old bastard not only survived the battle with grandfather but has managed to stay alive for all these years. The 5th Hokage didn't get much sleep during the night. The painful realization that no one in the village had a chance to beat Madara Uchiha came from going through all the information the Leaf had collected about him both during and after his stay there. She had only one choice if she wanted the village to survive. As she started to prepare multiple scrolls, Tsunade remarked, "I only hope that I've given them enough time." The Hokage called out to her assistant, Miyoko, and after a brief moment of waiting, a young woman abruptly popped her head through the office doors. Miyoko answered, "Yes, my lady. How may I help you?" When Tsunade yelled, "I need teams 11, 15, 17, and 21 in my office in the next 10 minutes. No exceptions, now go." The woman in front of her hurried out of the office and sent messengers to gather the teams that were needed. 10 minutes later, Tsunade sat in front of the gathered ninja, debating whether or not she was correct to use genin for the task at hand. Tsunade ignored the thought, knowing that they were her only option given the situation. They were disposable for the time being and were, after all, generic. "Alright, listen up, the following mission is a ranked. Each team will take a scroll and head in opposite directions. The packets I have given you includes information on your target along with their last known location. However, this information is a year out of date. Your orders are to locate the target and deliver the scroll. This mission has a time duration of 1 year. You are to report your locations as often as possible. However, if you have not complete your mission in 1 year, you are to return to village. We will try to provide you with any updated information we receive, but don't count on the accuracy of that information. Are there any questions?" Tsunade gave the group a briefing. "Look out over the town." One of the Team 17 members said, Tsunade. Sama, may I ask who is our target?" Before a tiny smile appeared on her lips and she spoke, Tsunade slowly turned back to face the boy. "Your target is." Hinata knelt in front of Kyuubi, gasping for breath. Hinata found it difficult to address the creature in front of her, saying, "You're a bastard." As 250-pound leg weights encircled the young woman's legs, the 9 Tails retorted, "If you have the breath enough to hurl insults, then you must be ready to continue." As it closely observed Hinata, the fox added, "Only I think this time we will increase the difficulty a bit." Hinata let her head droop a little and then turned back to the demon. "Why?" she inquired quietly. Kyuubi roared back at the kunoichi's lack of confidence, saying, What was that? Speak up. Stop acting as though you'll die the moment someone hears you." "Why?" she repeated, suppressing the unusual emotion that always accompanied having to speak up for herself. Staring into the demon's red eyes, Hinata said, "I appreciate everything you are doing for me. I know I have improved greatly in the time you have been working with me, but I still wish to know why you are taking the time to do so. Why are you trying to make me stronger? What do you want from me?" Considering both her and Naruto's training, she had to have an answer to the questions she had wanted to ask since the 9 Tails had first pulled her into its world. She had her own suspicions at first, but she had always kept them to herself out of fear of what might happen if she was proven to be right. "I won't tell you lies. I had hoped that you might host my friends if I could make you stronger, but I realize that's not possible. Because I'm not strong enough." With her face lowered to the floor, Hinata posed the question. No, it's not related to strength. Many of the Konohas so-called elite are already outclassed by your strength. The simple fact is that my partner and I want to be together again after being apart for so long. Nothing would change if you were to take over as host. Kyuubi responded candidly, my mate and I would still be apart. Before fully understanding what Kyuubi was trying to say, Hinata started, I don't understand. Mate, you are not the boys. In an effort to spare Hinata's feelings, the Nine Tails stated, our host must be mates in order for my mate and I to be truly together again. Oh, I see. Of course, you're correct. Hinata sadly remarked, it would be cruel to force Naruto to be with someone he doesn't love, as she fled from the fox and ended up crying and by herself in her own tent. How humanity ever survived to become this world's dominant species I will never know. Kyuubi sighed heavily at the girl's antics and watched the young woman disappear before heading back to the familiar confines of its sewer cell. Looking upon his master with his one remaining eye, Riku Asagi realized all too well that Madara Uchiha was a man not to be crossed or failed, even though he appeared to be enjoying a fresh cup of tea while sitting alone. The elderly man could have easily passed for a wise old uncle or a kind grandfather. Riku, what have you got to report? Madara Uchiha sipped from a hot cup of tea and asked. My lord, confirmation has been received that we will be adding 50 men to our forces. They're on their way from the land of rice right now and should be here in a week, Riku said. And what are our numbers after their addition? The Uchiha inquired, as though he was more interested in his cup than the information being given to him. We will total 700 ninja with them. However, since our agents are still recruiting men for our cause, this will not be the final figure, Riku stated. Well, that's excellent. Everything is moving along at a steady pace. What updates do you have regarding the teams that Konohagakure sent out? The elder Uchiha turned to face the man in front of him and asked. According to 3 of the teams we sent after them, the target has not been contacted, but it has been 3 weeks since the 4th team last sent us a report. They were going to enter the land of snow, it said, Riku answered. As Riku's presence disappeared from the room, Madara turned back to his cup and said, very well Riku, you are dismissed. In the hopes that the information they had been given in the last town they visited was correct and that their mission was nearing its conclusion, Team 17 hurried through the snow-capped trees of Kichura province. To what extent are you willing to wager that this will be yet another dead end? Kento Fujikawa made no specific requests. Kento, hurry up. Is there any chance that this lead will be any different from the others we've had since the mission began? To his teammate, Rokuro Jin replied wearily, hell, I'm starting to think that this Hyuga chick is dead and buried somewhere. Silent over there. Are you bastards attempting to reveal our position? Emmy Otomoshi gave her team a firm command. Emmy told the lone member of the Genin team who appeared to grasp the idea of stealth, Hanabi, look around and see if those fools invited any unwanted attention. As she checked the area and activated her blood trait, Hanabi Hyuga replied, yes, sensei. I could not see anything out of the unusual, Emmy-sensei. All right, then. We'll be setting up camp ahead of time because it's getting late. As they arrived at the designated campsite for the night, the elder woman gave her team instructions, saying, Rokuro, you have first watch. The 3 of them replied, yes sensei. They knew that disputing their teacher's directives would not solve anything. They had all come to her as disciplined individuals with aspirations of greatness, and she had shaped them into a cohesive team. Of course, they still had personality clashes occasionally, but that was to be expected of people who worked so closely together. Nevertheless, despite the occasional breakdown in civilities, they were a team that was well suited to one another, and more importantly, they were people she regarded as family, and at the moment, one of her family members was clearly in pain. Emmy Otomoshi guarded her team like a mother hen protecting her chicks. Hanabi is familiar to you. Regarding Rokuru's remarks, there's no proof that your sister is, Emmy said, sitting down next to her student, only to be met with icy, irate eyes. Hanabi looked back at the slowly fading fire and said icily, it would be better for her if she was dead. Emmy told the younger woman, who was obviously surprised by her outburst, you don't really mean that. A little more subdued than Emmy had ever encountered, Hanabi responded, you don't understand the ways of the Hyuga sensei. I truly don't understand your family dynamics because I wasn't raised as a Hyuga, but even so, I can't think of a circumstance in which a person's death would be beneficial. However, Emmy said, I'm willing to listen if you're willing to talk. As a Hyuga, she was taught that the clan's problems should never be discussed with outsiders, but as a member of a ninja team, it was never a good idea to keep secrets. Hanabi never looked away from the dancing flames of the campfire as she contemplated whether or not to openly express her feelings to the elder woman. I cherish my sister. There is nothing I wouldn't do for her because she is the closest thing I will ever know to a mother. But, from the clan's perspective, my sentiments are irrelevant, Hanabi said. Just because your clan feels a certain way doesn't mean that your feelings for your sister are wrong, Emmy argued. I understand that, sensei, but it's not just sentiments. Hyuga law and tradition play a role. You see, Hinata has shamed the clan in 2 ways according to our law. Initially, she was deemed unworthy by the clan elders to inherit her birthright as a clan heir. This indicates that she was supposed to be confined to the family's branch house and kept out of the main house by custom. She left the clan to follow the demon, though, before that could occur. As the feelings she had been fighting so hard to suppress came to the surface, Hanabi explained, one of these offenses might have been overlooked, but both are unforgivable in the eyes of the Hyuga. She loses her position in the branch house and her title as a result. Emmy, who did not fully comprehend Hanabi's agitation, offered that she would still be alive. You're not getting it. If she had only lost her rank and title, that is what would have happened. However, leaving the clan makes a big difference. The clan cannot afford to lose the Byakugan, which Hinata possesses regardless of everything else. Hinata will thus be made to become a clan concubine as a form of punishment. The male clan members who the elders believe have the best chance of having a child who possesses the Byakugan will be given her. But in reality, she will have to serve whatever Hyuga male wants her to do. Hanabi, unable to contain her sorrow for her sister, declared, she will spend the rest of her life as a whore to the clan. Emmy, who knew that various clans had their own internal laws and customs, was left speechless and in tears by what she had just heard, but she never imagined that any clan could be so heinous as to maintain a custom as heinous as the one Hanabi described. Emmy struggled to ask the woman in her arms, who was crying, Are you sure that they would really subject her to? They will not willingly sacrifice a female Byakugan who is capable of bearing children, and the only alternative punishment is death. Hanabi answered, I hope we never find Hinata if she is still alive. Emmy continued to reassure Hanabi, saying, so do I. 6 months had passed since he and Hinata had entered the land of snow to find the demon's mate, and Naruto was starting to question whether their search was some elaborate farce concocted by the 9 Tails. Naruto gazed into the seemingly endless blackness of Kyuubi's lair. Naruto stood in front of the demon's cage and yelled angrily, show yourself, furball, we need to talk. A pair of blood-red eyes slowly opened from inside the dark prison to focus on the blonde ninja. Naruto taunted, yeah, that's right, I'm talking to you. However, as the mammoth-clawed paw slammed against the cage, Naruto jumped back defensively. Dude, what do you want? A clearly irritated demon joked as it fully materialized in front of its human vessel, I haven't summoned you here. What am I looking for? To begin, you could let me know where this friend of yours should be. As he stood face to face with the 9 Tails, Naruto quickly responded, we have been searching all over snow and we haven't found anything that leads me to believe that your mate is or ever was here. A sudden burst of laughter reverberated through the sewers of Naruto's mind as Kyuubi watched him rant. What the fuck is so funny, bastard? Kyuubi's laughter gradually subsided as the blonde asked a heated question. What's funny is you? What does it matter to you where my partner hides? I have fulfilled my end of the agreement, have I not? Kyuubi answered harshly. It doesn't matter to me, but if you haven't noticed, it isn't just you and me out here, Naruto said bluntly. Naturally, I've noticed the winch. What man wouldn't? The demon started lustfully, she almost begs to be. Don't even consider completing that thought. Naruto fervently silenced the king of demons, saying, you will regret it the day you see Hinata, no matter what you do to hurt her. Kyuubi couldn't help but flash his teeth in what could only be described as a smile as he looked down on his host. Why is it important to you what I think of the girl? You are not entitled to her. She is allowed to choose who she wants to date, and what would you do if she decided to date me? The blonde argued with the 9 Tails. Naruto stammered, unable to refute the demon's assertions. Well. After all, it was true. Hinata may have followed him out of loyalty, but that was the extent of their relationship. He had no claim on her and no authority to dictate to her who she could or could not be with. She was one of his closest friends, but even that was a stretch in the strictest sense of the word. To be honest, Naruto had to ask himself if he had ever been a true friend to Hinata because, unlike his other rookie 9 friends, they never spent time together outside of missions, and he couldn't claim to know much about her while she seemed to know everything about him. The kunoichi had even been somewhat surprised to learn that he was the vessel of the 9 Tails. No, when forced to consider Hinata Hyuga in depth, it became clear that she was a mystery encased in a question and imprisoned in a clear box that was visible to everyone but concealed by a wall of glass. You're correct. Naruto eventually responded to the demon's taunt, saying, I don't have the right to say who Hinata can and cannot be with, but that doesn't mean that I have to sit back and listen to you disrespect her. Alright, I won't do anything to the girl. However, taking into account the girl, I share this with you in appreciation of the relationship we have created and because she refuses. She was present on the day we made our agreement. She witnessed everything, and I had a conversation with her after you came back to reality. She and I made an agreement, and just like you, she became my student, learning everything I decided to teach. She looks for strength to defend, just like you. Similar to you, she has earned my respect, Kyuubi informed a startled Naruto. Have you been instructing Hinata? However, why didn't she tell me? Why have you waited until now to speak up? With excitement, Naruto inquired. She told you because she wanted to. I maintained her trust just as I have maintained yours, but now things are different. I can't get through to the girl anymore. She has stopped talking to me. You have to face her. But I would advise you to pay attention to everything she says, the 9 Tails clarified. What am I missing? Is Hinata having a problem? Naruto answered uneasily. Kyuubi flooded Naruto's mind with memories of his village life in an attempt to make the young man confront the truth of why Hinata had sacrificed everything to follow him. I know you don't understand, but maybe this will help. The rush of memories slowed as Naruto gazed pitifully at the caged beast. As the final memories came to an end and Naruto let the demon examine the most secure area of his mind before gradually returning to the real world, he muttered, I guess that proves that just because you're in my mind you don't know anything about me, Kyuubi. The king of demons, who was left alone in his cage, screamed, let a single tear fall, then lay on the ground with his head covered in regret and shame. Emmy swore as she carefully inspected a long, deserted campfire. Damn it. The Junin said to herself instead of her team, if the target was here then they left a long time ago. Now, sensei, what should we do? Rokuro inquired, a little irritated. They had been out of the village for 7 months with only a string of failures to mark their progress, and Emmy knew her team of genins were exhausted. Well, she was exhausted, but that didn't really matter in the big picture. Their mission instructions were clear. Find the target and deliver the scroll within a year, or return to the village for more instructions. We carry on as usual, Rokuro. We keep going. Emmy exclaimed as she jumped into a nearby tree, her group right behind her. Have you verified this, Dove? Before her, Tsunade cautiously questioned the Anbu captain. Indeed, Hokage. Sama. According to the information, Madara Uchiha had 835 men under his command as of 2 days ago. At that number, our forces would be overpowered in a matter of seconds if he decided to attack us directly, the young woman calculated. Excellent. Dove, you are to deploy right away to Suna and give the cage this information and the scroll. He and he alone are to receive it from you. You get it? As she was getting the scroll ready for Gaara, Tsunade gave an order. As Dove took the scroll from Tsunade and left the room, she merely said, I understand, my lady. A week had passed since his last encounter with Kyuubi, and during that time the demon had been oddly docile. Possibly as an apology, perhaps as something more, but Naruto didn't really care either way because he was currently faced with the more pressing issue of how to approach Hinata. Naruto silently watched as Hinata seamlessly transitioned from one series of taijutsu stances into another. No matter how the next few moments unfolded, Naruto knew that there was no way to avoid that inevitable outcome. No matter how hard he tried, every argument he made ended with the same conclusions. Hinata had loved him for years, and for years he had ignored her feelings as well as his own. Yes, he had good reasons for his actions, but even with those, he was still unable to rightfully justify the pain he had caused her. It was the last thing he wanted while watching the Hyuga heiress train. He used to just come out and say what needed to be said and hope for the best, but now things were different. Hinata had sacrificed everything for him, followed him without any expectations, ulterior motives, or agenda, and had come with the sole hope that she might be able to help him, the man she loved. True to her word, she had been by his side battling to help carry the burdens that he placed on himself from the very first day. Nevertheless, Naruto was aware that he needed to make amends with Hinata, tell her the truth, and let things unfold naturally. Hinata knew he was observing her, and somehow that gave her comfort. During their time together, Naruto mainly left her alone, though they did talk, train, and eat together, things that any team would do while in the field. Instead, Naruto's simple act of observing her was unusual, unique, and something she would treasure. Watching the Kunoichi's face light up at the compliment, Naruto said, Hinata, that was perfect. Do you think we could talk for a minuet? He asked. He moved to her side and said, there's something I really need to discuss with you. Oh, Naruto, thank you. What topic would you like to discuss? Hinata paused to catch her breath before responding joyfully. I'll just admit it because I'm not very good at things like this. Naruto said, I know everything, and he sat down, gesturing to the stunned woman next to him to follow suit. What do you mean by nah? Ru. Too, huh? With her mind racing with the potential things that Naruto might know, Hinata asked as she sank to the ground. Because of Hinata's anxiety, Naruto couldn't help but smile. Don't worry, Hinata. Naruto said, Kyuubi told me a few things. Hinata appeared to relax a bit before covering her face. Hinata continued, oblivious to Naruto's wide smile, I'm sorry Naruto, I never meant to intrude, but the 9 Tails offered to help me become stronger and I wanted to be able to better help you and I wanted to tell you but I was afraid you would hate me and… Don't worry, Hinata. There was nothing wrong with you. To allay the girl's fears, Naruto reiterated, where Kyuubi resides in my mind is his realm alone. The Hyuga said, forcing herself to relax, I still should have told you what was happening. Maybe, but I didn't really want to discuss that with you. Though it wasn't required, Kyuubi felt that it was time for some truths to be revealed and decided to do so. As he closely observed Hinata's response for any clues as to what the kunoichi might be feeling, Naruto explained, you see, I have known for a while about your feelings towards me and I think it's time you knew why I have never acknowledged them. Every word he spoke was like a dagger to Hinata's heart, and she had listened to them all. Hinata said, hardly raising her voice above a whisper, you knew and you never. Naruto detested seeing Hinata suffer, especially since he was the one who caused it, but he had no choice but to carry on since what had been done was done. Hinata, please don't ignore me just yet. He pleaded with the young woman next to him, there is so much more I need to tell you. Hinata briefly appeared to be lost in a distant place, but even in her present state, Naruto's voice led her back like a bright light in the middle of the night. What more can be said? Really, it's okay. You were attempting to be considerate and avoid raising my expectations. I recognize and value that. Hinata fought desperately not to run, thinking, after all, that's the kind of person you are, always putting others before yourself. Hinata, you're mistaken. As he shifted to force Hinata to face him, Naruto said, I know how you feel, and I ignored you, but not for the reason you think. So why? If you had a different feeling. I mean if you… She stammered, her little voice betraying no genuine hope. Naruto hesitated, attempting to think of the most effective explanation. Hinata, you believe you know me, but you don't. You believe that you can somehow connect your life to mine because your family has never recognized you, but you are mistaken. No matter how awful your family may be, you still have them. People still see you regardless of how they perceive you. On the other hand, I've never had any family. People see the 9 Tails when they look at me, not Naruto Uzumaki. You grew up in a mansion with a warm bed, clean water, and an abundance of food. When I was 5 years old, I was told not to return to the orphanage and was expelled. I lived on the streets, using the straps that people left behind to fill my belly. The sewers served as my bath, and the bushes as my bed. Only because of a few good people who made sure I didn't sink so deep into hell that I couldn't be rescued did I make it out alive. I was saved by the 3rd, Iruka, Ayame, and Old Man Tucci. They tried their best to assist me in spite of everything they had lost to the fox. The problem is that everything has a cost. Many people stopped respecting the 3rd because he used his position of authority to keep me safe. Because he loved me, Iruka was shunned by the majority of his friends and his surviving family. Because they would feed me, Tucci and Ayame almost lost their family business. They all made an effort to conceal the problems I caused them, but I was aware of them. I will never be able to pay back the debts they each made for me. Hinata, do you understand what I'm saying? Not only must I suffer because I am the 9 Tails vessel, but anyone who approaches me too closely will also suffer. Naruto continued his story without letting Hinata's gaze leave his. What about Sakura, if that's the case? With caution, Hinata approached Naruto and asked. I'm still primarily a human, regardless of who I am. My feelings for her started out as simple attraction, progressed to infatuation, and finally developed into love. However, my feelings for her changed as I grew older, and I can now see them for what they are. Sakura is someone I adore. In an attempt to answer her query, he clarified, she's the sister I never had, the person that I can go to guide me in the right direction when I get lost along the way. Hinata merely said, placing her hand on his whiskered cheek, I think I understand. Naruto couldn't recall the last time he had felt so calm, but his moment of tranquility was short. Lived as he felt Hinata pull away from him. The softness of Hinata's touch sent a euphoric wave of contentment crashing down over him. So you chose not to let me make my own decisions? Naruto, do you think so little of me? Do you believe that I am not aware of my own thoughts and feelings? Hinata asked, barely raising her voice above a whisper. How dare you, you bastard! How dare you even consider that I would give a damn about what other people thought? I don't care about the Kyuubi, and I don't care what other people think. Hinata spoke passionately as her voice rose steadily and she let her tears fall. None of that matters to me because like it or not my heart belongs to you Naruto Uzumaki and that is not going to change. In hindsight, Naruto realized that what was about to happen had been predetermined from the moment Azure Eyes first met Lavender, and he cursed himself as he watched the sobbing Kunoichi. He had wasted so much time over the years trying to protect someone who never needed protection. Naruto let his feelings for the woman in front of him fully develop, pulling Hinata into his arms and bringing her as close to him as he could. His love for her was undeniable, his need to be close to her was obvious, and his desire to protect her was undeniable. I've been foolish in a lot of ways. I have engaged in endless combat without realizing it was a futile endeavor. I wasted a lot of time worrying about what other people would say or think. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me for all the things I've done wrong. I'm telling you now in the hopes that it's not too late, even though I should have told you years ago. Believe me, Hinata Hyuga, I will spend the rest of my life proving my love for you. Naruto addressed the women in his arms solemnly. Hinata was speechless. All she needed to know was that Naruto loved her and wanted her by his side. Her dreams had finally come true. If anyone had been watching, they could have attested that the kiss between Naruto and Hinata easily put all the others to shame. There have been 5 exceptional kisses in recorded history, and determining their exact rating has always been difficult and frequently caused a great deal of controversy. All of our forces have been gathered, my lord Madara. As he knelt before the elder Uchiha, Riku Asagi respectfully reported to his master, we only need your order to launch the attack. Excellent, Riku. But I've made the decision to grant Konohagakure a brief reprieve. Madara handed the younger man a sealed scroll and said, selected a messenger and have him deliver this to the Hokage. Yes, sir. However, may I inquire why you have decided not to pass judgment on Konoha yet? Riku answered. I want the best of them. I want there to be no question that my power was the reason that accursed village fell. So I'll give them a little more time to find a way to gather their weapons and approach their gods for peace. The Kyuubi festival is tomorrow. We will attack and burn Konohagakure to the ground in 2 months, Madara Uchiha boasted boldly to the man who was kneeling in front of him. As he observed the events through Naruto's eyes, Kyuubi grinned. My dear Yukiko, it appears that the boy has at last come to terms with his partner. Kyuubi called out with its mind, I think it's time for you to show them who you are. Yes, sweetheart, I have been observing, but do you think the girl will accept me? Any human would pay a high price for bonding, Yukiko retorted. I cannot say with certainty but from what I have learned of the girl I believe that she will accept you if for no greater reason than to remain with the boy. The 9 tails came back. Does that, however, make it correct? What other option do you have, my love? We have spent so many years apart. The fox asked himself, do we not deserve happiness? In any case, the girl will have the final say in the matter. The girl will have the option, but the boy was made to carry me. Yukiko said, what choice does one really have when love is involved? She emerged from her hiding spot and approached Naruto and Hinata with caution. Since they first arrived in the land of snow, Yukiko had been keeping a close eye on Naruto and Hinata. Through her own observations and the stories her sealed maid told her, she had learned a lot about the two, but the ancient spirit was not satisfied with that information alone. Of course, Yukiko could see that Hinata and Naruto were genuinely in love because they had already made many sacrifices for one another, but their love and their willingness to sacrifice for one another were nothing compared to what it meant to be genuinely mated. My love, I'm not sure, Kyuubi. It is impossible to break the bond between you and the boy. But the girl. Yukiko yelled into her partner's head. If you think it's necessary, you have the right to test the girl, but you have to understand that she is our only choice. The 9 tails replied, she and Naruto have accepted each other's hearts and will not voluntarily part, nor should they be asked to. After a long time apart, Yukiko wished for little more than to be with her beloved Kyuubi once more. After accepting this fact, the spirit could only proceed and hope that her misgivings about Hinata were unfounded. Yukiko thought about what she should do for a while. Unless Hinata agreed to become her host and true maid to Naruto, she and Kyuubi would never be able to be together again. Yukiko whispered, if we are ever to be together again, my love, I have no choice. I get it. How are you going to put her to the test? With ease, the 9 tails inquired. As Yukiko emerged from her hiding spot and made her way slowly toward Naruto and Hinata, she replied, I will try to take from her that which she holds most dear. The boy must not interfere, my love. As you wish. But I warn you. As he shuffled his plane of existence to the snowy grounds where he had frequently trained with Naruto, Kyuubi responded, despite the kinship I have forged with Naruto, if he feels that Hinata is truly in danger then not even I will be able to hold him at bay. When Yukiko started to gradually release her chakra, she replied, "I promise that no lasting harm will befall the girl." Even though it had all seemed unreal, it was all true. Naruto loved Hinata Hyuga, not Sakura, Ino, or any of the other villagers. He had spoken the words to her, and now he was holding her in his arms while whispering the straightforward words that she had been longing to hear. "I love you, Hinata Hyuga." As she attempted to get closer to Naruto, she muttered, "Please, say it again." "I love you." He joyfully and softly responded, granting the kind request. Hinata gently returned the kiss, feeling his body go limp and slide from her arms to the ground below. "Thank you." After returning from playing her part in the opening of the Kyuubi festival, Tsunade sat by herself in her office, gazing out over the village. As Hokage, it was her responsibility every year to recount the Kyuubi attack and how the courageous ninja of Konoha had sacrificed their lives to defend the village and its inhabitants. The speech was the same year after year, the words remained the same, and the hateful curses of the villagers who damned the Nine Tails and extolled the fallen never change. Nevertheless, Tsunade played her part and wore her fake smile until she could safely leave and return to the seclusion of her office, where she could drop the mask she wore for the people and reveal the disgust she held for the festival and those who celebrated it. She knew, however, that she could not fully blame the attitudes of the people, who, of course, did not know the full consequences of the Fourth's actions, nor the truth behind the attack. She could only look to the future and the day when she could right the wrongs of the past, but that day was not today, and there was nothing she could do about the past. Without ever looking at the quiet person standing still on the other side of her desk, Tsunade said, "Report raccoon." As he set the messenger pouch on Tsunade's desk, the raccoon masked Danbu said, "My lady, excuse the interruption. A messenger has arrived with a message from Madara Uchiha." When she had finished reading the scroll that had been set in front of her, Tsunade's face showed nothing. She just set it aside, wrote out a quick reply, and gave it to the man in front of her. "Give the messenger this, then let him go. After that, I want you to let people know that tomorrow at 6:30 there will be a ninja council meeting in the council chambers. Everyone should go if they are able to." As she turned away from the man in the mask to gaze out into the joyous village once more, Tsunade said, "And raccoon, when I say everyone, I mean everyone from Anbu to Root and every rank in between." Raccoon bowed and said, "It shall be done, Hokage." Sama. He was about to abandon the elderly woman to her solitude. As Naruto stood in front of the Nine Tails, his normally happy face was tinged with a mix of bewilderment and rage. Just a moment before, he had been on the verge of giving Hinata his first real kiss when he was angrily dragged into Kyuubi's mindscape. What the devil? Naruto made a demand of the Demon King. "Why did you decide to bring me here at this particular moment?" "I'm sorry, Naruto, but it had to be done." Kyuubi pointed to a large window that had appeared out of nowhere and said, "Your mate's trial is about to begin." "What?" A furious Naruto screamed as he hurried to stand just inches from the demon's muzzle. "I warned you, Fox, if you do anything. The girl won't suffer any serious injuries, but we need to know if she can handle the demands that will be placed on her," Kyuubi clarified, turning to face the mental window. "To whom did she prove herself? What is strong enough?" Following the fox's lead and focusing on the window, Naruto asked quickly, "What the hell are you planning and what's so special about this? What is this?" As he tried to make sense of the manifestation in front of him, he asked. "I understand the outside world in this way." Kyuubi clarified, "I can use our chakra to see the world as it exists around you." "So you've been keeping an eye on me all along?" "No, not entirely," was the fox's response. Naruto considered the demon's answer, but instead of asking what Kyuubi had and had not seen, he turned back to the window and Hinata as she inspected his body. "You had the option to issue a warning," Naruto offered. "Hinata's out there thinking that I must be dying or something." "Time was of the essence. The start of her trial is imminent," Kyuubi replied. "You have yet to provide an explanation for that. Who exactly is she supposed to be?" Naruto started, but he was interrupted when he noticed a big snow fox slowly approaching Hinata. "Yukiko." Naruto uttered a barely audible whisper as his cerulean eyes were filled with understanding and his thoughts drifted through his and Kyuubi's shared memories. As Kyuubi looked upon his host, he could see the young man's mind start to piece together the disparate conversations and events that had been leading up to this point. The land of snow, Hinata's willingness to accompany him on his journey, the hatred of the villagers, their training, and finally Yukiko's appearance. All of this had been presented to him in a complicated tapestry of circumstances that, taken as a whole, revealed an unquestionable truth. Naruto said incredulously, "You did this, from the very beginning you planned it all." It was a factual statement rather than an accusation. Whatever else the demon was, his primary trait was patience, He had wanted to make amends for the suffering he had caused, and this was the result of that desire. As he continued to observe what was happening in the real world, Kyuubi said, "Watch boy, let's see if your mate's words match her heart." As Riku Asagi knelt before his master, the words, "Please kill me," echoed through the main structure of Madara Uchiha's camp. "You have something to report?" Madara demanded icily. The man on his knees replied rapidly, "The messenger sent to Konoha has returned with their Hokage's response." "And how did she react?" Riku unfolded the scroll and skimmed through its contents. "My lord, she replied that a shinobi's true character is determined by his death, not by his life. Their value is demonstrated by their actions prior to death, not by their actions during their lifetime," Riku replied. Before the elder Uchiha's laughter filled the room, the only sounds audible for a brief moment were the ongoing cries for death coming from somewhere in the building. Hinata looked at Naruto and laughed as she collected herself. She cursed to herself, "Damn fox. Was there no better moment for him to give Naruto a call? We were so close to him that he simply had to do it." Before Hinata could finish her thought, she sensed the sudden appearance of an unfamiliar chakra signature. She immediately shifted into a defensive stance and looked around, only to discover that a large white fox was closely observing her. As the fox started to loosen up a little, Hinata said softly, "You scared me." "Girl, you must feel afraid," the fox answered. "I could have easily taken your life if I had wanted to." Hinata once again assumed a more formidable defensive stance, and the only thing preventing her from being overwhelmed by the creature's remarks was her familiarity with summons who had the ability to speak. "What do you want and who are you?" Hinata asked the animal in front of her a question. "Girl, don't worry about who I am or what I want. We don't do business together." As she started to approach Naruto's unconscious form, Yukiko said, "Set aside and you may still live beyond this day. Remain in place." When Hinata saw the fox's intent, she quickly put herself between the two and issued a warning. "I will not allow you to come any closer. Girl, get out of my way. By right, the creature that lies there is mine." As her chakra flared, Yukiko said angrily, "You have no claim to him." Hinata responded to the spirit's challenge by activating her Byakugan and saying, "He is precious to me and as long as I am able I will not allow you or any other to harm him." Yukiko growled fiercely and sank into a crouching attack stance upon hearing Hinata's response. If nothing else, the girl possessed courage, but in Yukiko's opinion, courage alone would not establish Hinata's deservingness. "Stupid child." The ghost screamed as she swung her left claw in Hinata's direction. Hinata found her opponent's swift movements to be almost divine, and if it weren't for the combination of her blood line trait and her 9 tails training, the blow would have sliced her in two. "You have the audacity to discuss valuable bonds with me," Yukiko shouted. "I should kill you where you stand for your insolence," as she cut her right claw through a nearby tree, sending numerous pieces flying in Hinata's direction. She had barely escaped the initial attack when she was struck by the remains of what had once been a very large oak tree, but Hinata knew she was in a bad spot and wasn't going to just roll over and let this creature have its way. "What do you want with Naruto, and who are you?" Hinata said it again in the hopes that the creature would respond and give her some time to come up with a plan to save Naruto and herself. Though Hinata was barely standing after her first two attacks, Yukiko noticed for the first time that the Hyuga had not relinquished her position protecting Naruto, and she smiled inwardly at the girl's resolve. She hasn't left him behind. She must be aware by now that she has little chance of winning, much less surviving this battle, but she is still standing her ground and protecting her mate, Yukiko told herself. As Yukiko started to stalk back and forth in front of Hinata, she responded, "I suppose you have earned the right to learn your executioner's name and the reason you are about to die." "The boy is my mate, and my name is Yukiko," the spirit concluded, watching the girl for her response. "Whatever his connection to you may be, it is meaningless in the face of the bond we share." "Your friend? You mean that you are Kyuubi's partner, right? The reason we are here is because of you," Hinata told the spirit excitedly. "Kyuubi asked Naruto and I defined you. You will step aside and let me take what is rightfully mine if you are aware of who and what I am." Before Hinata hurried in her direction, Yukiko strode towards Naruto and said, "What's left, you may do with as you like." "What is left, in your opinion?" As any hope that her struggle with the spirit was coming to an end swiftly faded, Hinata demanded while holding a kunia. "The boy is my mate's seal. I'm going to tear that human husk off and set him free." As if Naruto were a food wrapper to be thrown away as trash, the ghost pulled the lavender. "Eyed girl, what happens after that, I don't care." Astonished by Yukiko's slowing down, Hinata stood still for a moment as the white fox approached Naruto. I will. Hinata spoke softly, barely attracting the ancient spirit's attention. I will not allow you to hurt my beloved, I will not allow you to take away my heart. Before she was slammed into a nearby tree, Yukiko started, and how do you intend on stopping me, Kai? Naruto and Kyuubi had been watching the battle closely in his mind, and both of them were understandably proud of Hinata for refusing to give in to Yukiko. Remember that you selected that minx as your mate, so try not to smirk too much. You can't control her. Kyuubi made fun of his host. I never intended to attempt to exert control over her. In addition to being a talkative person, you were never able to keep Yukiko under control. Where are you now? Reminding the king of demons that his own mate was more than a handful, Naruto asked. Kyuubi started to say, now listen meet, but was cut off by a massive chakra surge that shook the mental landscape like a strong earthquake. How on earth was that? As he got back up after the earthquake knocked him to the ground, Naruto asked. I don't know but. As Kyuubi stared blankly out the mental window, Naruto interrupted, hey Kyuubi, I think we may have a problem. The Nine Tails had seen many things in his long life, some of which were so beautiful that even he found it difficult to forget, but the sight that met his eyes as he gazed out into the waking world was beyond his comprehension and explanation. All he could do was utter the first thought that came to him. Dude. As the image before him burned itself into the slacker's mind, Shikamaru remarked, during one's lifetime there are images that often burn themselves into the mind of the observer. Whether those images are joyous or tragic depends wholly upon the circumstances under which they were observed. Like wildfire, the word had swept through the village. All shinobi had responded to the Hokage's summons, irrespective of their personal or political ties. Standing side by side, Genin, Chunin, Jonin, Root, and Anbu wondered and waited. In an unusual offer to share his snack with the slacker, Choji asked his lifelong friend, do you think this is about what's been happening along the border, Shikamaru? The young Chunin answered, who knows for sure, but chances are good that it does. Since Shikamaru's expression made it clear that he didn't know anything more than anyone else, Choji didn't bother to ask any more questions. Anyone who had been on a mission in the last few months knew that Madara's forces had been building up. The majority of Leaf Shinobi, if not all of them, were aware that an invasion was the only reason a force of that size should exist. When was the only question that remained? Tsunade watched and listened to the various ninjas' whispered conversations while standing in the hall's shadow. Each of their voices carried a hint of fear that she could hear. Fear, which she understood easily. Fear she shared with the men and women of the Leaf as one of the five shadows. After all, who wouldn't be somewhat afraid when faced with certain death? The fifth did not reveal anything as she moved to stand in front of the Leaf's gathered strength. The village's shinobi looked to her as Hokage for motivation, guidance, fortitude, and hope. She served as their guiding light in the darkness. The invisible hand that guided them down the dark path of honor and integrity. The entire room's attention swiftly shifted to the Hokage as she took her place in front of the gathered shinobi. Tsunade started to be adamant about not withholding any information from her troops. My fellow shinobi. As many of you know, for the past several months a large force has been gathering on the southern border of Fire Country. They have but one goal, the complete and total destruction of Konoha. Many of you have probably already reached this conclusion on your own, but for those of you who haven't, you now know. Moving on, I'll explain why I've called you all here. I'll share with you the information I have and a potential plan I have developed to save the village. To start, Anbu members have decided that Madara Uchiha, who fought alongside and lost to the first Hokage, is in charge of the enemy forces. It was once thought that he passed away following the battle with the first, but we now know that is untrue. Second, in an attempt to rally support against Madara's impending invasion, I have communicated with our allies. They have committed troops to our cause, and the first of them is expected to arrive in Konoha in the next 2 weeks. Regretfully, we will still be at a disadvantage despite the reinforcements. We still have time to get ready, though, because last night I got a message from Uchiha that confirmed most of what the Anbu had already told me. He said that he intended to destroy the village and that he knew about some of the things I had already done about this. He also said that he does not plan to invade the Leaf for another 2 months, or more specifically, not until December 22nd. He says that he is doing this because he wants us at our very best, meaning he doesn't want there to be any doubt that the village hidden in the leaves fell to his superior strength. In light of this, we have until December to get ready. Do you have any questions? Tsunade concluded, still gazing out over the assembled shinobi. One Chunin, wearing a mask, said, you said you had a plan to save the village. Well, save the village might be an overstatement. The plan I have is to use the escape routes we have built into the village in order to save as many lives as possible. It's my hope that these survivors might be able to find refuge with our allies and someday with luck restore the Leaf. It's not perfect and the chance of it working is small. but with all things considered it's the best shot we have of ensuring the continued survival of the ideals and principles of the Leaf. Tsunade elaborated. From somewhere in the packed room, Hiashi Hyuga said, Hokage. Sama, you mentioned that our enemies were aware of certain actions you have taken concerning their pending invasion. May I ask what those actions were? Tsunade paused to think about whether it would be prudent to tell the gathered shinobi everything. However, there wouldn't be much harm in telling the truth given the situation and the fact that her original plan had failed. Almost 3 years ago, one man's efforts crippled this village. Pain was the most powerful foe we had ever faced, and for a while, it seemed unlikely that any of us would make it through that terrible day. Those of you who fought him, like me, know how powerful he was and how close the Leaf's demise was. But 2 of us managed to keep the icy hand of death at bay. One who opposed Pain's evil intentions and ultimately defeated them, and another who refused to let the first walk through hell by himself. However, many of the people in this village still despise Naruto Uzumaki, who came to me soon after that fateful battle and asked to be allowed to leave the place he had spent so much time trying to protect. When I asked him why, he simply replied that he could no longer stand the intolerance he had been shown his entire life. I sympathized with his pain and, although it saddened me to do so, I granted his request. He left us in search of something better, somewhere he would be accepted, but he did not go alone. I mentioned that 2 people rescued this village from pain, and most of you are aware of what Naruto did that day. However, what few people realized, aside from those close to the battle, was that Naruto would have died that day if it weren't for the efforts of another. Hinata Hyuga put herself between Naruto and Pain without giving it much thought, and in reality, with little hope that she would survive the battle. I won't tell you why, because I doubt it will matter much in the end. Hinata Hyuga was among the first people to truly accept Naruto, and the truth is that, aside from his parents, she was likely the first to truly love him, so much so that she followed him into the unknown just to ensure he wouldn't be alone. Tsunade explained to the Leaf shinobi as she looked out into the crowd, daring anyone to appear to have something negative to say. But that doesn't really answer Lord Hyuga's question, does it? After I found out who was in charge of that army, I understood that even if we were able to match the enemy in strength and numbers, we would never be able to repel a direct attack from Madara, who is capable of at least 7-tailed beastly strength. The only way we could hope to match that kind of power would be to have equal power on our side, but that's where things get a little complicated. When Naruto left, I gave him a mission that would not allow him to return to the village until he had finished it. However, when Hinata followed him, I gave her another mission that was contingent on either Naruto finishing his mission or receiving a direct order to return to the Leaf. Almost a year and a half ago, I sent out 4 teams with identical orders, instructing them to find Hinata Hyuga and deliver my order to return. I had hoped that Naruto would return with her, putting us on a level playing field with Madara, but that hope is no longer possible, the 5th said, her eyes briefly filled with despair. Ino said loudly as the Hokage's previously expressionless face changed to one of regret, then there's still hope. If Madara isn't going to attack until the 22nd, then Naruto and Hinata have over 8 weeks to make it back. I'm sorry, but that's not the case. The orders I sent were 2-fold. They contain an automatic cutoff date. If the teams had found Naruto and Hinata by that date, then they would be close to if not already in the village. The fact that they aren't here and that none of our outermost outposts haven't sent word of their approach can only mean that none of the teams reached them by the cutoff. Tsunade clarified. Kakashi said, Lady Hokage, may I ask what were the 2nd-fold orders? After giving the copy ninja's question some thought, Tsunade concluded that it would not ultimately reveal much about the impending conflict. To herself, Tsunade murmured, what the hell? In the event that none of the teams made it by the cutoff, the focus of my final orders shifted to Naruto. I instructed him to locate any survivors, find refuge with one of our allies, and when enough time had passed, begin the rebuilding of the Leaf. He is to seek out and forge alliances to strengthen his position as he sees fit and under no circumstances attempt to retaliate against Madara. If it is the fate of this village to fall because of its own short-sightedness, then so be it. But I will not meet Kami with unnecessary blood on my hands by ordering the last of us to throw away their lives in an attack that will almost certainly fail. Tsunade continued. An angry Jonin started to say, but my lady, Uzumaki cannot carry out those orders. Forging alliances and building a village are the responsibility of the, before Tsunade interrupted. My last order to Naruto was given with the full acknowledgement of the Ninja Council, who until now have been sworn to secrecy. However, there is no longer a need to keep that secret. As of today, Naruto Uzumaki has been invested with all the power and responsibility befitting his position as. From her silent observation, Hanabi inquired, what do you want, Rokuro? The young man tried to speak quietly enough that only Hanabi could hear him, saying, I just wanted to say that I'm sorry." The girl turned to face her teammate for the first time and asked, "What do you have to be sorry about? Is there something wrong doing you want to confess?" "No, I don't have anything to confess, but at the same time I do apologize for what I said about our target. I didn't realize that she was your sister," Rokuro said. As Hanabi leapt from her tree perch to stand in front of Rokuro, she inquired, "And how exactly did you learn that she is my sister?" To the delight, if not annoyance, of the young Hyuga, Rokuro promptly responded, "I overheard you and Emmy Sensei speaking the other day. I won't say that I understand what you're going through because I don't. I suppose no one really can know exactly what your feelings are. But, I know what it is to be controlled by the traditions of one's clan. You might not believe this, but from what you told Sensei, your clan traditions are rather forgiving compared to those of mine." As she turned to take back her perch, Hanabi spat, "I don't believe you. You are only saying these things in some pathetic attempt to make me feel better. However, I have neither asked for nor require your sympathy or pity. Believe what you want, Hyuga, but what I said is the truth. If your sister had been a member of my clan, then she would have never had the opportunity to chase after someone she obviously cares about. In my clan, births are kept within the clan. Our children are judged from the day they are born until their 2nd year. If at any time during that judgment they are considered to be too weak to serve the clan or in some way deformed, then death is immediate. There is no room for debate, no repeal, no consideration. The judgment is final. Your sister may be forced to live her life as the clan's horde, but at least she will live. My sister never had that luxury." Rokuro angrily returned before giving the speechless girl a final hate-filled glare before retreating into the darkness of the forest. "It had to be very hard for him to say that to you, Hanabi." As the older woman emerged from the shadows to stand next to Emmy, Hanabi questioned, "Sensei, what he said, was it true or was?" Emmy told Hanabi of her watch before letting the young woman rest and think about everything she had been told. "I'm afraid it was all true. The Jin clan believes that any and all weakness must be rooted out. Over the years the village elders have tried repeatedly to convince them to change their ways, but as you know, the traditions of a clan are not subject to laws and traditions of the village." As she made her way through the village's early morning commotion, Tsunade silently swore at herself for disclosing more information than she had meant to. Nevertheless, what was done, and at this point, not much could be done about it. Her only conclusion was that there wasn't much she could do to change the councils and her own decision. However, given all the issues her little inadvertent outburst was certain to cause her, even that meaningless victory was insufficient to lift her spirits. "Lady Tsunade, may I speak with you for a moment?" She turned to the person who had spoken to her and complained to herself, "And so it begins. Of course, Lord Hyuga. I was about to return to my office. Join me and we can speak over a cup of tea." Hiashi bowed and landed next to the 5th without needing any more encouragement. As Miyoko hurriedly served the village leaders and left the room with courtesy, Tsunade kept a close eye on the man in front of her. She was aware that beneath his outward display of modest composure, the Hyuga elder was furious. As she sipped her tea, Tsunade got straight to the point. "All right, Hiashi, enough pussyfooting around, out with it." The head of the Hyuga clan let all of the rage he had been suppressing for the majority of the morning finally explode, shattering the subdued mask he was wearing in an instant. "Damn it, Tsunade, you could have said something. You've known where Hinata has been all along, and you just stood there like a statue, watching me lose my mind over my worries. I thought we were closer than that. Do you really think so little of me that you wouldn't trust me with information about my own child? Hell, that's not even the worst of it. You send Hanabi on what can only be described as a fool's errand, knowing that I'm climbing the walls over Hinata's disappearance, and you know that no one of those teams will ever find the two of them. Did you ever consider what it would be like to lose both of my daughters? After everything, you had the gall to ask for my counsel's support. I never would have backed you if I had even the slightest suspicion that you were hiding information about Hinata from me, but now that I think about it, that's probably why you didn't say anything." Hiashi swore at the silent Hokage. Tsunade suppressed the growing backlash that awoke inside her and simply gazed at the man in front of her. She was aware that he was in pain, and the last thing she wanted to do was to make him suffer anymore, but her own rage increased as he yelled. Hiashi went on to rant until he broke through the final barrier of Tsunade's restraint, and the 5th got up from her seat, slamming her fit into her desk to finally silence the head of the Hyuga clan. "Yet still you call yourself a friend, but friends like you I can do without. Didn't you for a moment think that I might be open to the situation if you took to the time to explain it to me? Wasn't my trust in you enough to warrant your trust in me? Damn it, you never even gave me the chance to say goodbye to my little girl. Yes, I came to you as your Hokage and asked for your support that, as a faithful shinobi, I shouldn't have needed in the first place. But then you come here after I've humbled myself enough to ask for your help, and then you wonder how I had the audacity to do so. That's quite enough, Lord High and Mighty. Who the hell do you think you are to come into my office and try to blame all the crap in your life on me? I didn't tell you about Hinata, but I had a good reason. Before she was able to regain some control, Tsunade screamed, in case you missed the previous few years, here's how. I am the Hokage of the Leaf, you conceited ass. I'm not some servant that has to come and report to you whenever a decision needs to be made. You and the rest of the fools in this village need to pull the sticks out of your collective asses and get that fact through your fat heads. Tsunade knew that she had only added to Hiashi's suffering, even though she hadn't meant to, as he was already bearing more than his fair share. Hey, I'm sorry, Hiashi. I never imagined that things would get this bad. I never thought that when I took over as Hokage, the village would be attacked by forces as formidable as the Akatsuki, Pain, and now Madara. It seems like Kami herself is punishing us for some terrible transgression we've committed. However, you must also realize that the issues between you and Hinata are your own fault, not mine. Tsunade said calmly to the still irate Hyuga, who only reacted when his daughter was brought up. But the fifth went on to give her side of the story before he could interrupt. I know it's been hard for you since Hattori's death, but as hard as it's been for you, didn't you think for a moment that it might have been just as hard for Hinata? The Hyuga lord attempted to impose his beliefs on Tsunade by saying, she was just a child. She could not possibly remember Hattori well enough to. The voice of Tsunade rose, she doesn't have to remember her, and Hiashi was forced to remain silent once more. Hiashi, even though you can see every little detail of your surroundings from a great distance, you are oblivious to what is directly in front of you. I made Hinata tell me why she wanted to follow Naruto before she left, and she told me that even though she should be the heir to your position in the clan by right, Hanabi will be chosen over her. She also said that she loved him, which is a valid reason, but there was more to it than that. But before you start thinking that's why she left, I'm here to tell you that it wasn't. Hinata doesn't want to replace you, and she left because you prefer Hanabi over her for whatever reason. She knows that you love her in your own way, but it seems like you've never bothered to let her know that, and your clan has followed your lead. The worst thing about Hiashi, according to Hinata, is that even after she has worked hard to improve, you still refuse to see her as anything other than a failure. Hinata told me that you and the clan have always considered her a failure and that you go out of your way to remind her of that fact. You thought so little that you passed her off on Kurenai without a second thought when she demonstrated no natural talent for the gentle fist. I think that girl deserves much more than what you have given her. She deserves some happiness, and if she can find that with Naruto, then so be it. Now, if you will excuse me, Lord Hyuga, I have bigger things to worry about than your wounded pride. Tsunade finished angrily, turning away from the clan leader. I hope you will pardon me if I don't cry for you, if I don't regret keeping the truth behind Hinata's departure from you. Tsunade called to her assistant, Miyoko, and she entered the Hokage's office right away. Please escort Lord Hyuga out and send in my next appointment. Miyoko hurriedly said, right away Lady Tsunade. She was about to lead Hiashi out of the office when the nobleman stopped and turned back to the fifth. Without receiving any kind of recognition from Tsunade, Hiashi bowed and walked out of the office, saying humbly, Hokage. Sama, I thought that I was doing the right thing by my children. I see now that I was wrong. Please forgive my foolishness. A hesitant moment of relief came to her as she stood in front of Yukiko Hinata. Finally, their search was over, and Naruto would be able to keep his word to Kyuubi. Hinata said to the creature in front of her, you're Kyuubi's mate. You're the reason that we're here. Kyuubi asked that Naruto and I find you. Yukiko stalked towards Naruto before Hinata rushed into her path, saying, if you know who I am, then you will stand aside and allow me to claim what is mine. What is left you may do as you like. As soon as any hope that her fight with the spirit was over, Hinata demanded, what do you mean by what is left, while grabbing a kunai from her pouch. As the lavender-eyed girl approached Naruto again, the spirit sarcastically said, my mate is sealed within that human husk. I intend on ripping it open and freeing him. What becomes of what remains afterwards is none of my concern. Hinata was momentarily immobile as the white fox approached Naruto due to Yukiko's deceleration. Hinata's mind raced in the endless intervals between heartbeats. She was aware that all odds were against her. The spirit's raw power was simply too strong for her to defeat in a fight with Yukiko. But she could not, no, she would not, leave Naruto behind. Hinata said softly, barely attracting the ancient spirit's attention, I will. I will not allow you to hurt Naruto, I will not allow you to take away my heart. Yukiko started to say, and how do you intend on stopping me, Kai, before she was struck by a tree. What had hit her was invisible to Yukiko. The girl, who despite her appearance showed strength equal to her own, had to be the culprit, according to common sense. However, this was not a sparring match. Rather, it was a trial to see how valuable the girls were. To meet Yukiko's expectations, a single blow was far from sufficient. Yukiko stood and lunged at Hinata, growling, "You surprised me, girl. I did not think you had that much power in you. Still, I will claim what is rightfully mine." Hinata dodged the spirit's blow and punched Yukiko in the left side, saying, "I will not allow you to take him away from me." The ancient spirit, however, was unfazed by the blow and swiftly retaliated by unbalancing Hinata with her tail and bringing her to the ground. Yukiko mockingly started to stalk towards the still Naruto, saying, "If this is your best, then you should give up now. You have no chance of defeating and preventing me from claiming what is rightfully mine." Hinata knew in her mind that the spirits were telling the truth. Yukiko's strength was superior to hers, regardless of how far she had come. But the present circumstance was not under the control of her mind. Hinata could only hear her heart at that precise moment, and it was very clear what it was trying to say. Glaring at the ghost, Hinata started to sign through a lengthy string of signs, whispering, "I will die before I allow you to harm Naruto." Yukiko moved closer to her purported prayer, hoping the girl wasn't about to give up. She had demonstrated unparalleled resolve to defend her beloved in spite of her disadvantage, something Yukiko greatly admired. Yukiko came to stand over Naruto and said icily, "So it seems that you have taken the wiser path, child. As a token of my generosity, I will make sure that the boy survives long enough for you to say your goodbyes." Yukiko sighed quietly at Hinata's lack of response. Although the girl had shown a lot of promise, it appeared that she had just given up on keeping the person she claimed to love safe. Yukiko started, but she was choked by a tightening chakra whip around her neck. "You claimed to love him. You said that you would not allow me to harm him. Yet here we are. You frozen there weak and afraid, and I about to," she said. Hinata was ready to pass away. She would gladly sacrifice her life if it meant that Naruto would survive. Kyuubi had taught her a jutsu, but she had never imagined using it. Even though it was easy to do, he explained, it required a lot of chakra and precise control. She had one, but not the other. It was risky to use what little chakra she had left to create the chakra whip, but if her plan worked, she and Naruto would be safe. If not, at least Naruto would live. This battle was, in one form or another, coming to an end. He was staring blankly out the mental window when Naruto interrupted, "Hey Kyuubi, when exactly did you teach Hinata how to give chakra a tangible form?" The 9. Tails followed Naruto's gaze and asked, "What are you babbling about?" The 9. Tails had witnessed many things in his lengthy life, some of which were so breathtakingly beautiful and others of which were so upsetting that even he found it difficult to forget. But he was unable to comprehend or explain the sight that met his eyes as he peered out into the waking world. The first thing that came to mind was all he could say. "Shit." With a nervous chuckle, Naruto said, "So I take it you didn't teach her that?" As 9. Tails watched Hinata's whip sparkle from the interaction of water and electricity, he responded, "I taught her the chakra whip jutsu. It takes a great deal of chakra to maintain but is simple to perform. This however is far beyond that jutsu. She has enhanced the chakra with combination of water and lighting elements to create something truly powerful and beautiful. Unfortunately, she doesn't have enough chakra to properly maintain it. In fact, I'm surprised that she has maintained it this long." The enhanced jutsu swung around Yukiko's neck and body, causing her to roar in agony. She had been irresponsible, misjudging the woman in front of her. She would never make the same mistake twice. Hinata struggled to get to her target, only to realize too late that Yukiko had reduced the distance between them, causing the whip's tightness to slacken and release. "Just a little more. I just need a little more chakra and a few seconds to get close enough. Then I'll be able to," Hinata plained. "No," Hinata exclaimed, as her best opportunity to halt the spirit passed her by. Yukiko swiftly and viciously cut Hinata's arms, ripping through flesh and bone, causing the young kunoichi to fully release her jutsu before collapsing to the ground, battered and bruised. Yukiko paced around Hinata's still body, taking no chances. The girl had pleasantly surprised the ancient being twice now, extending their battle in the process. But now there was little question that the battle was over. "I'm impressed, human. Your level of chakra control is much better than I would have expected of one so young. It is not just anyone who could have created a jutsu such as that with your level of chakra. Another time, a different opponent and you might have won this battle, but against me you simply had no chance." Yukiko insulted her opponent backhandedly as she once attempted to seize Naruto. "I will take what's mine now, girl." Hinata did not want to accept Yukiko's words, regardless of how true they were. However, she was forced to face the truth of her circumstances at this moment. Her attempt to defeat Kyuubi's mate had failed. She had not kept Naruto safe. In a barely audible whisper, Hinata begged, "Please, Lady Yukiko, Before you take him, let me make one last request. Yukiko stopped her journey and briefly glanced back at the battered girl, thinking Hinata's behavior was just another trick. You fought well, so I will listen to your request, but I make no promise that I will grant it. Hinata forced her aching body to kneel before the laughing snowfox in recognition of the spirit's kindness. Hinata was ready to make her last appeal, but she was determined not to display any weakness before the ancient being. As her last remaining strength failed and her body slumped to the ground to await Yukiko's decision, Hinata begged, Lady Yuki. Although I haven't the right, I beg you. If you must take his life, then allow me to die with him. He is my heart, my soul, my life. Without him I am no thing. Please, if we must be parted in life, then allow us to be united in the hereafter. Naruto was furious because he had witnessed the whole fight between Hinata and Yukiko. He had been able to keep himself in check for nearly the whole fight. But witnessing the harm done to his beloved had driven him over the edge. As he struck out with his chakra in an attempt to escape Kyuubi's domain, Naruto screamed, Damn it, Fox, you said she wouldn't be hurt. Let me out of here, she needs me. Despite his understanding of his host's emotions, the Nine Tails could not just let Naruto sabotage the trial. He would not let this opportunity to be happy be wasted because it was the only one he and Yukiko had. Naruto, stop and listen to me for a moment. I know how it seems, but trust me, Yukiko knows what she's doing. She will not allow the trial to go farther than it has to. As his chakra continued to lash out, the blonde answered, Farther than it has to. Hinata's out there wounded and begging for death, exactly how much farther could it go? She alive, wounded yes, but alive. If Yukiko had wanted her dead, then she wouldn't have survived the first attack. This trial is to determine her worthiness. No wait, that not true. This trial has nothing to do with whether Hinata would make a suitable host for Yukiko. This is a judgment of Hinata's heart. Kyuubi spoke, hoping to reason with his host. Naruto yelled at the Demon King, That's what this is about. You want Hinata to become host to Yukiko. Never, I would never allow it. It isn't your choice, boy. It's true that you and I had no choice in being bond to one another, however, that is not the case with the girl. It will be her choice to be bond to my maid should she pass this trial. Kyuubi responded. Naruto said, I said no, I won't allow her to suffer the way I did, in response. So you would force your will upon Hinata, substitute your wants for hers? Will she have any will of her own, or will she simply be your slave awaiting your every instruction for the rest of her life? Asked the Nine Tails. In a rare instance, the demon's accusation silenced Naruto. No, but this was never about her becoming Yukiko's host. This has always been about the strength of her heart and whether or not she will be strong enough to truly walk by your side. Kyuubi began. You know as well as I that we are forever bond. Soon the boundaries that separate us will fade, and when that happens we will cease to be Naruto and Kyuubi. We will become someone new with all the attachments of the old. You will be as much Yukiko's mate as I, and when that happens Hinata will mean nothing to you unless she becomes your mate, unless she joins with Yukiko. Hinata was aware that she would die no matter what the creature in front of her decided. Her life would soon end, whether as a result of her wounds or a final blow delivered by Yukiko. Her heart continued to turn toward the man who had just taken her as his own, despite the fact that she would undoubtedly die. The spirit said smoothly, I refuse your request. Hinata boldly pleaded with the snowfox, Please. I love him. I don't wish to be parted from him. I realized that I was mistaken about you, girl. I believed that the person I fought was someone I could respect as a woman and a warrior, but now I realize that I was mistaken. You said that you loved the boy and that you would die to protect him, but instead you beg for death. You who say that you love so deeply would rather die than fight on. I feel sorry for you, but I feel sorry for the boy because he truly believes in you and loves you. As her admiration for the Hyuga began to wane, Yukiko rebuked him, saying, You do not deserve his love, but do not worry, in death he shall not know the kind of person you truly are. He shall stand before Kami bathed in the knowledge that the woman who vowed to love him truly loved him. You have to live with the knowledge that in the end you, rather than fight for him, you chose to give up and put his fate in the hands of another. Hinata felt the spirit's words pierce her heart like a razor. Sharp kunia, only strengthening her convictions and reviving her soul. Who was this creature to doubt her heart, after all? Who was this woman to doubt her love for Naruto? Hinata's voice crackled with tension as she made herself stand up again. How dare you? How dare you belittle my feelings for Naruto? You know nothing of my love for him. You know nothing of what I would sacrifice for him. I would die to protect him. I almost died to protect him. You think I asked for death as some kind of escape? I would rather be with him in death than without him in this or any life. You have no right to judge me. Perhaps what you share with Kyuubi is deeper than my feelings for Naruto, but that doesn't make them any less genuine. Hinata casually mocked, striking a nerve with the snow fox as her body slipped into a fighting stance. You keep saying that I can never understand what it means to be mated to another. That it is some kind of undeniable bond, but what did you do when your mate was sealed away? Were you there for him? Were you by his side fighting for him, risking your life for him? Because when they taught us about Kyuubi's attack on the village, there was never any mention of you. Hinata responded with absolute certainty that she was going to die, saying, but you're right. I never should have asked to die. I should have kept fighting. That was a mistake I now intend to rectify. I withdraw my request, Yukiko. One way or another this fight is about to end. Only the outcome remains unclear. When Yukiko's chakra flared and she lunged towards the Hyuga air, she replied, very well girl, you have made your choice. As Yukiko's blow got closer to Hinata's wobbly body, everything slowed down. Hinata had nothing left to pit against the spirit, despite her bluster. The fact that she was able to stand after using up almost all of her chakra in the previous battle was nothing short of a small miracle, and she was aware of it. In any case, it would soon be over. Naruto would soon follow her when she left this world. She would die with Naruto by her side, and they would be together forever. As she had always imagined, they would be together forever. She would accompany her beloved on walks, conversations, and other activities. However, it would not be as she had imagined. She had dreamed of being with Naruto for years, but she had never imagined that death would be the thing that would bind them together forever. No, she and Naruto were always alive, no matter what shape her dreams took. Alive for the sake of living, developing, sharing, and loving. Even though death was all that awaited her at the end of the day, she dreamed of a life with Naruto rather than a death with him. However, he didn't have to accompany her just because she was destined to die. Hinata pushed the last of her life's energy into a single, decisive blow that was aimed straight at Yukiko's heart, whispering, Naruto, I'm going on ahead. I'll see you later. She would try her hardest to take Yukiko with her if she were going to die. Enough! Roared Naruto's enhanced voice as Yukiko and Hinata were held inches apart by strong chakra tails. The blonde said sharply, this trial is over, as he carefully lowered the spirit to the ground and then gave Hinata his whole attention. Do you understand me, Yukiko? As Yukiko lowered herself to rest close to Naruto, she replied softly, as you wish my lord. Naruto briefly changed into what Sakura had jokingly dubbed medic mode in relation to Yukiko. The Leaf has assigned at least one medically trained shinobi to each team since the Third Great Ninja War. In the event that the team's medic was killed or seriously injured, it was necessary for all shinobi to learn at least basic first aid due to the unpredictability of combat. Naruto had the added benefit of being paired with Sakura and having trained under Jiraiya for years. Despite not having received traditional medical training, he was well versed in field medicine and first aid. He checked Hinata's vitals quickly and carefully to make sure she was stable enough for him to proceed with treating her more severe injuries, but he stopped his examination to gaze at the spirit next to him. How? Naruto asked the spirit next to him. This was a trial to judge the girl's heart. The only thing that was real during the trial were the actions and motivations of the girl. Everything was designed to test her, to determine the strength of her conviction to you. It was too. Naruto questioned sharply, and none of this had anything to do with your own desire to be with Kyuubi? Yukiko shot back, it would be a lie to tell you that those desires did not carry some weight during the trial. Naruto's doubts about the spirit's intentions were evident, but they vanished as soon as he met Yukiko's eyes and realized that she was telling the truth. She genuinely wanted what was best for him and her partner, regardless of her personal preferences. If that meant that he would fall in love with someone else, then so be it. As she watched Naruto tend to the sleeping Hinata, Yukiko explained, the girl will awake by morning. Although she was not harmed, she did expended nearly all of her chakra. However, if you wish it, I can awaken her now by giving her a small amount of my own chakra. No, I believe she would be better off sleeping. She had been training prior to this, and she must be exhausted from the trial and everything else. You may have an almost limitless supply of chakra, but that doesn't mean you never get tired. You should also get some sleep. We can discuss everything in the morning. Naruto reappeared, carrying Hinata to their shared tent while Yukiko trailed closely behind. Emmy exclaimed, this is ridiculous, as she dispersed the memories of a long, gone campfire. We've been pursuing them for a year. A whole damn year, and all we've found are abandoned campsites, yelled the Jonin team leader, letting out her frustration. After weeks of trudging through the frozen plains of the land of snow, Team 17 knew that seeing their sensei in a rage was never a pretty sight. Kento started, sensei, perhaps we should. What should we do? The young genin moved away from the irate woman after Emmy interrupted her student. Emmy gathered herself before quickly apologizing to her 3 charges after realizing that letting her rage get the better of her would not improve the team's current circumstances. Look, I'm sorry for getting angry. She paused to think about how to proceed, then said, I'm not angry at any of you, it's this mission that has me so irritated. As everyone is aware, our mission is to find Hinata Hyuga and carry out Lady Tsunade's directives. That mission had a 1-year time frame. Despite getting accurate information about our target's whereabouts, we have been unable to find her on multiple occasions over the past year. She always seems to be a few steps ahead of us. We are almost past the time allocated for this mission as a result of those failures. We would have to start the journey back no later than November 1st if we wanted to get back to the village before the year ended. As a result, we must collectively determine whether to keep searching until the 1st or to give up right away, Emmy counseled her team. However, isn't that your choice, Sensei? Rokuro asked the elder Kunoichi cautiously. After waiting to hear what else the others had to say, Emmy answered, normally it would be, but after all this time I think that this is one decision that we should make together. Having said that, what are your individual thoughts on the subject? Sensei, we were instructed to find the target and convey the message. Shouldn't our mission's completion be our first priority? Kento asked. Indeed, those were our directives. But we were also told to return to the village or finish the mission within a year. Emmy reassured the young man, it would not be against our standing orders to return now, when the chances of successfully completing the mission within the remaining time are so slim. I vote we go back now if that's the case. What's the point of continuing if the chances are that we won't find the target even if we keep searching? After all, isn't it true that sometimes a ninja can't complete a mission even if he gives it his all? Rokuro said. You're correct, Rokuro. Even with the best efforts of the designated team, missions can occasionally not be accomplished. The best course of action in those situations is to withdraw and report as much as you can so that the next team assigned to the mission has as much information as possible. To put it another way, if the knowledge gained from a mission failure will help with its completion in the future, there is no shame in failing it, Emmy told her team. However, Sensei, this is Hanabi's sister, not just any individual. Don't we have a duty to? Kento started, but Hanabi cut him off. I suggest we head back to the village. This mission has little to do with the fact that my sister is the target. That's just a coincidence. The following facts should be taken into consideration. Since the target has eluded us thus far, there is no reason to think that she won't do so again if we keep looking. Furthermore, we don't really have an ideal location for the target. It's true that the information we got suggests that this is where the target should be. But we haven't found anything in nearly a month of searching. Hanabi calmly explained to the now silent group, at this point, shouldn't we consider the possibility that the information we received was incorrect and that the target was never in the land of snow? Well, Kento, what more would you say in light of Hanabi and Rokuru's viewpoints? Emmy questioned her pupil. No, Sensei. Kento responded, a little disheartened by Hanabi's lack of concern for her sister. Based on what the others have said, I will follow the majority opinion and vote to return to the village. Emmy shrugged off her pack and started to set up camp for the night, saying, very well, we will make camp here tonight and tomorrow we will begin the journey back to Konohagakure. Enough. As Yukiko and Hinata were held inches apart by strong chakra tails, Naruto let out a roar. The trial is finished. As he carefully lowered the spirit to the ground and fixed his gaze on Hinata, the blonde spoke sternly. Can you comprehend, Yukiko? He kept going without ever looking at the spirit fox. As Yukiko lowered herself to rest close to Naruto, she replied softly, as you wish, my lord. Before attending to Hinata's more severe wounds, Naruto quickly and carefully checked her vitals and found that, aside from a few small cuts and scratches, she was unharmed. Naruto started to question Yukiko, saying, I don't. The purpose of this trial was to assess the girl's hearts. During the trial, her motivations and actions were the only things that were true. Everything was intended to put her to the test and gauge how strongly she believed in you. It was done too. And Kyuubi and your wish to be reunited had nothing to do with this? Determined to find the ancient being's hidden agenda, Naruto asked sharply. Yukiko swiftly replied, opting to be totally honest with the young man. It would be a lie to tell you that those desires did not carry some weight. Perhaps it was just Kyuubi's influence or his own trusting nature, but Naruto trusted Yukiko instinctively for whatever reason. By morning, the girl will be awake. Throughout the trial, she used up nearly all of her chakra. But if you'd like, I can awaken her right now by giving her a tiny bit of my own chakra, Yukiko clarified while continuing to watch Naruto and Hinata interact. As he gently lifted the sleeping girl into his arms and made his way to their shared tent, Naruto answered, no, I think it would better for her to sleep. You should get some rest as well, Yukiko. As a clone materialized and raised the tent flap to let Naruto and Hinata in, Yukiko replied, "Yes, my lord." Anticipating that the clone would be thrown aside after the two were through, Yukiko gazed at the duplicate as it kept the flap open. "Why are you holding back?" The clone's question made the spirit think about what she was being asked to do. Yukiko stepped through the portal, bowing slightly to the clone, only to have the temporary being dispel him a moment later. Naruto and the spirit did not exchange words as Yukiko took a seat next to Hinata, deciding that any further communication should wait until morning. As Team 17 set up camp for the night, they were not alone. 4 people were hiding deep in the snow-covered brush, closely observing their every move. "What are they doing?" A tall, slender man wearing what looked like animal fur scrapes from head to toe was asked. As she lowered herself from her vantage point, the group's lone female retorted, "They appear to be setting up camp for the night." "Well, perhaps they gave up on finding the bitch after all." A large man wearing green leather and holding a hefty looking ball and chain said, "If so, perhaps we should go ahead and kill them." "Remain silent." Lord Madara gave clear instructions. "Until they track down the demon and his whore, we stay with them. We then murder every person still alive. We'll keep watching and following until then." The last male reprimanded, silencing the other as he walked away, then turned back to face his friends with a lustful gleam in his eye. "Now all of you set up camp. And woman, you'll be sharing my bed tonight," he concluded without saying anything more than that. Running as fast as his little legs would allow, the boy had to get away before it was too late, before he was discovered, before they could harm him once more. The boy's mind was racing as he unconsciously channeled chakra into his tiny legs, thinking, faster, farther, have to get away, have to hide, somewhere, anywhere. The only thing that mattered was that he escape his pursuers, because if he didn't, it would be as if he had never been caught before. "I located him. Here he is." As strong hands slammed into the boy's back, sending him to the ground and ending the chase, a slurred voice called out. "No." The boy screamed inaudibly as he fell to the ground. The owner's voice reached him faster than the boy could follow, stopping him before he could escape again. The boy didn't know the man holding him, and he didn't know what he had done wrong, but at that moment, it didn't matter. The strong, unrelentingly punishing hands were on him, gripping and wrenching his arms in their vice-like grip. "No, let me go. It hurts, let me go, please." Knowing that others would soon arrive, the child screamed as he struggled to get away, desperately hoping that at least one would try to assist him and put an end to the suffering the others intended to inflict. "You little jerk, we'll teach you. You're going to pay for killing my wife and child." The man said this while mercilessly slamming his fist into the boy's side and stomach several times before launching another attack. "Let's simply take the action that ought to have been taken years ago." From the assembling crowd came a voice without a name. "Get rid of the idiot," another person yelled. "Make him answerable for his actions," another one arrived. "He ought never to have been permitted to survive," and another still, as the unidentified attackers repeatedly beat the child before turning to look at the harm they had done. The boy, crippled by excruciating pain and fractured bones, made a valiant attempt to escape, but he knew it was futile, just as it had been the only time he had been apprehended by the upright people of Konoha. "Demon, where do you think you're heading?" Just before darkness took over the boy's world, he heard someone yell. Naruto opened his eyes to the dawn of a new day and swore, "Damn." "My lord?" Yukiko asked, turning to face the person holding her sealed mate. "I'm just dreaming about the past, Yukiko." "Don't worry about it," he replied, grinning his signature smile at the spirit. "As you saw." Yukiko started, but Hinata abruptly stopped her as she held the spirit close to her like a stuffed animal for a child. Naruto tried his hardest not to laugh at the two as he watched the scene. After all, it wasn't every day that a sleeping kunoichi smothered a powerful spirit. "Will you do something to assist me, or will you just sit there?" Yukiko inquired, a little irritated by the boys and consequently her friend's lack of response. "Nope, I believe I'm going to start making breakfast." As he slipped out of the tent, Naruto thought, "After all, I think you two will have a lot to talk about once Hinata wakes up." Yukiko relaxed into Hinata's grasp and let out an irritated breath as she watched the Jinchuriki go. As Yukiko humbly asked, "You're not really fooling anyone, Lady Hinata, so if you would please release me, it would be greatly appreciated." The Hyuga's grip on her tightened. As she directed more chakra into her hands and arms to better contain the spirit, Hinata gently responded, "As long as you are a threat to Naruto, I am afraid that I cannot release you." Yukiko clarified, "I'm not a threat to my lord. Funny, I seem to remember you saying something about ripping him apart." "My lord Kyuubi is forever bond to the boy. They cannot be separated by mortal hands," the spirit responded. "I've already heard that from Kyuubi and Naruto." Hinata shot back, but that doesn't change what you said or tried to do. The spirit calmly told her captor, my words and actions yesterday were designed to test you. What sort of examination? Instead of asking, Hinata said. A test to gauge how committed you are to my lord. A method to determine whether you were genuinely deserving of his company. Or, more specifically, whether you were capable of handling any future demands, Yukiko clarified. Deserving of his company? With a gentle reply, Hinata tightened her grip on Yukiko. I wanted to know how much you were willing to give up for him, if you were willing to sacrifice your aspirations in order to fulfill his. The White Fox reasoned, I needed to know if you would sacrifice everything for him. Are you serious? Before hurriedly leaving the tent, Hinata pushed Yukiko away in response. Hello, good morning. Hello, Nada. Naruto tried to say hello to his girlfriend, but she sprinted off from the campsite, ignoring him. Before chasing after Hinata, Yukiko bowed slightly and said, my lord. Unable to fully comprehend the situation, Naruto focused on his inner demon. Kyuubi, what just took place? As he observed the two women making their way deeper into the forest, Naruto posed the question. I don't know Kit very well, but in situations like these, I've learned that it's best to avoid asking too many questions. If they ask for your assistance, that's great. If not, let them figure it out on their own. But trust me when I say that getting sucked into their argument is the last thing you want to do for your own mental health. Kyuubi gave this advice as he watched the two dash into the forest, just like his host. Even though Naruto isn't usually one to let things go, in this case he decided it might be wiser to respect the Nine Tails' wisdom. He then nodded and went back to preparing the morning meal. As the morning light shattered into a multitude of colors and patterns that Hanabi had never imagined and would never forget, the young Kunoichi watched in awe as the sun broke through the tree canopy and danced across the freshly fallen snow, creating an ideal scene straight out of a fairy tale. The soft words, beautiful isn't it, came from Emmy as she joined her student. It is, indeed. Hanabi answered, I just wish I was seeing it in a different setting. Your sister? The older woman asked. Sensei, I'm having trouble thinking of anything else. As she continued to gaze out at the enchanted scene, the young woman attempted to explain, I know in my heart that it will be better for her if she isn't discovered, but I can't help but feel like I need to find her, that if I don't then something really bad is going to happen. If you felt this way, why did you vote to go back to the village? I cast my vote for the team's best option. When it comes to the mission and the team's success, I don't let my emotions get in the way, Hanabi clarified. On the other hand, I concur that a competent ninja should not let their emotions interfere with their ability to complete a task. Sometimes one's emotions and the success of the mission align, Emmy explained to her student. That might be accurate, Sensei, but can you really claim that this is one of those occasions? No, I'm not positive. However, since we still have a little more than 2 weeks before we have to start the journey back, wouldn't it be better to use up all of our time and be certain than to give up and find out later that our objective was only a few weeks away? With a joyful smirk on her lips, Emmy asked. Gosh. A snarling voice behind the two women made the two Kunoichi turn to face their male teammates. Hanabi glared at the two and said, it's not nice to eavesdrop on others' conversations, Rokuro. Perhaps not. When Kento stood back and observed the conversation, Rokuro sarcastically interrupted, but it's also not nice not to tell your teammates that they are going to be stuck on a mission for another 2 weeks after having voted to end the mission the night before. Before her smirk vanished, Emmy glanced at each of her pupils. All right, Team 17, gather your equipment. We'll keep looking for another 12 days. Regardless of the result, we will then be heading back to Konohagakure. The Jonin gave her orders as the member firmly separated into individual tasks. Yes, Sensei, oh, a normal guy couldn't have made me fall in love. I had to go and fall in love with Naruto. The only person with a demon sealed inside him in the entire village. Oh, and he had to have the king of demons sealed inside of him. Not just any demon, mind you. The fox has the queen of all bitches as a mate, as if that weren't enough. I swear, Cammy, I would pack my things and go back to the village right now if I didn't love him so much. I'm confident that I could find a good man to settle down with and make things better with my father and the council. Hinata swore as she ran through the forest. Hell, if no one else wants me, I'm sure Kiba would jump at the chance to get in my pants. Who am I kidding, though? For me, Naruto is the only one. The Hyuga heiress laughed to herself as she slowed and eventually stopped, saying, there is just no one that could ever come close to taking his place in my heart. Without ever looking at the person behind her, Hinata said, so I suppose that means that you and I will just have to come to an understanding, Yukiko. The spirit replied, you are nothing like I would have supposed you to be, Hinata Hyuga. And you're nothing like I imagined you to be, Lady Yukiko. Hinata responded politely. But putting aside our individual opinions of one another, before we went back to camp, I think it would be best for everyone if you and I came to an agreement. I agree. As Yukiko arrived next to Hinata, who had lowered herself to a patch of ground free of snow, she thought, it won't do for us to continue acting like kids before our mates. Alright, then. How do we start? The majority of the day has been spent away from them. Do you believe we ought to pursue them? Naruto, do you think the girl is weak? As he observed his host train, Kyuubi inquired. Obviously not. One of the strongest women I've ever met is Hinata. As he conjured up multiple smaller versions of himself to attack the Jinchuriki, the Nine Tails asked, then why would you belittle her by not trusting in her own strength? I can appreciate your wish to keep her safe, but ask yourself 2 questions before you run off to save her. First, is it necessary to save her? Secondly, is she interested in being saved? What am I missing? As he set down the final fox clone, Naruto answered. The girl has been observing you from a distance for her entire life. She has proven herself to you by achieving all of her accomplishments. She can be slammed into the ground or raised to the heavens by you alone. She values your words and deeds more than anyone else's. Does knowing this now make it easier for you to respond to the questions I posed to you? The blonde was left alone as the world around him changed back to the land of snow, and the king of demons gave his explanation before turning away. Lady Yukiko, what do you truly want? After talking about a variety of subjects for several hours without reaching a mutual understanding, Hinata asked her companion. Yukiko bluntly retorted, Lydia Hinata, I share your desire for the best life for myself and my partner. An answer that makes sense, but that wasn't my question. Therefore, Lady Hinata, what would you ask of me? Calmly, Yukiko inquired. You claimed that our altercation was an attempt to gauge my deservingness, but I believe that's just one of the reasons for your test, Hinata said. Alright, let's assume you're right. Why else would I be passing judgment on you? I think that, at least in part, you wanted to see if I would make a suitable host. And why would I pick you if I ever wanted to be sealed in a human? Taking everything into account, the spirit deceived the Hyuga heir. Kyuubi is the only explanation that comes to mind. I once questioned him about his decision to train me. He claimed that he did it in the hopes that I would host his mate. He hoped that by having me host, he and you could possibly get back together in a more comfortable setting. Physical perception. However, since Naruto and I were not together at the time, my hosting would not have resolved that issue. But that's no longer the case. Because Naruto and I are together, you could be with Kyuubi once more if I were to become your host, Hinata thought, keeping an eye on the spirit to see what it might be thinking. The girl had once again shown herself to be interesting in the spirit's eyes, and Yukiko laughed to herself as she heard Hinata's interpretation of the situation. You have surely thought about how you would respond to the question if it were posed to you if you think this is the main reason for my behavior. To be honest, all I have done is ponder how to respond to that query. I thought about letting myself become bonded with you when I first challenged Kyuubi about why he was training me. To be honest, I was thrilled about the possibility, Hinata replied as she got up and started to slowly make her way back to the campsite. Are you excited? Yukiko thought as she stumbled to follow the young lady. Please tell me, child, what excited you? Did you get excited about the possibility of acquiring power or something else? The ghost asked icily. Don't misunderstand Lady Yukiko, please. I'm not referring to the potential power gain that such a bonding could provide when I say that I was excited. To be honest, I didn't give such aspects of a union much thought. Instead, at the time, I thought that Naruto and I might become closer if I joined you. You see, no one could truly empathize with his feelings for a long time. He didn't have someone who could truly comprehend what it meant to be a Jinchuriki until he became friends with Gaara of the Sand. But I thought that by joining you, I might be able to understand him better and get to know him better. As Yukiko listened to Hinata talk, he couldn't help but laugh at the girl's justification. You have good intentions, but your approach is flawed. Do you really think that connecting with me would give you some sort of enchanted understanding of Naruto Uzumaki's soul? You told me how much you cherished him. You declared in front of Kami that you would sacrifice your life for him. Was everything you said earlier a lie, or do you simply lack self-awareness? As Yukiko kept walking past the now still Hinata, she asked. Not at all. I have a deep affection for Naruto, and I've never felt more secure about my emotions. I believed that through bonding with you, I would be able to comprehend what it was like for Naruto to bond with Kyuubi. However, I understood that it wasn't required. My only hope when I followed Naruto was that I could help him in some way. I just knew that I wanted to help him, but I had no idea how. I vowed to Lady Tsunade that I would not tell him how I felt, and I did just that. In fact, Kyuubi was the one who expressed my feelings to him. However, since he already knew how I felt, even that wasn't required. As she proceeded to the campsite, Hinata explained, "You see, Naruto and I are already very close, and now that we are a couple, we are growing closer still. I understand. Therefore, you have no more reason to think about hosting me," Yukiko said, her voice slightly tinted with loss. "No, I would never think of bonding with you in that way. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't feel honored to do so," Hinata intelligently replied to the ancient creature, only to discover that Lady Yukiko had left her side. After talking extensively with Lady Tsunade, Hiashi realized that he had a lot to answer for, so he sat thinking back on the events of the previous few years. Neji bowed before the head of the clan and said, "You sent for me, Hiashi-sama." "Sit down, Neji, please." The elder Hyuga started, "I would like to ask you a favor. According to Neji, if it is within my power it shall be done. Relative to my relationships with my daughters, I have recently realized how many mistakes I have made. I believe I have failed you as an uncle just as much as I failed them as a father. I'm confident that Hisashi would not have made the same errors as me if everything had gone according to plan. When it came to matters of the heart, he was always the more sensitive one. I really miss my brother's counsel in times like these." Hiashi talked more to himself than to the other people in the room. "Hiashi-sama, you know my kids better than I do, Neji. I'm pleading with you as a father who only wants to atone for his previous transgressions, not as the head of the Hyuga." Hiashi bowed to his nephew and humbly asked, "Please help me understand them so that I can be a better father to them in the future." After giving the strange request a brief thought, Neji spoke. "Uncle, of course. However, you must first understand who they were and how a man who was viewed as a failure saved them from themselves before you can comprehend who they are now." Naruto. While he was gathering wood for the evening fire, Hinata screamed and ran in his direction. "What's the matter, Hinata?" As he hurried to the agitated girl's side, he answered nervously. "It's Yukiko." While we were conversing, she abruptly disappeared. With ragged breaths, Hinata recited, "I tired. Lu. Looking for her but I couldn't find her anywhere." "Don't worry, Hinata. I'll find her, you simply take a moment to relax." However, how could she be anywhere? Hinata merely watched as Naruto made a well-known hand gesture in response to her question. Jutsu with multiple shadows. As hundreds of clones appeared and instantly dispersed in all directions in pursuit of the errant spirit, the blonde cried out. "Now, Hinata, could you please explain what transpired?" Hinata sadly turned her gaze away from her beloved's eyes as she started to recount the specifics of her conversation with Yukiko after finally catching her breath. "So Yukiko vanished without ever recognizing your willingness to host her?" As he and Hinata waited for word from the army of clones he had sent, Naruto posed the question. In response, Hinata said, "Yes, I believe so. Has Kyuubi mentioned her disappearance in any way?" Naruto responded to his anxious girlfriend, "No, he hasn't, which probably means that Yukiko is safe and just doesn't want to be around us right now. I am unable to comprehend. Why do you think his silence indicates that there isn't a problem?" As she hurried to her feet and turned away from the Jinchuriki, Hinata asked angrily. Naruto was momentarily confused, but then he realized and gave an explanation. "I apologize, Hinata, but I assumed you were aware. Since then, Kyuubi and Yukiko have been mates. They have a connection that enables them to always sense and communicate with one another's location." Hinata's expression as she turned to face Naruto was one of relief, perplexity, and incredulity. "So, you know exactly where Yukiko is, and I've been worried all along?" In an attempt to reassure his companion, Naruto replied, "No, I don't know where she is. That's why I sent out the clones to look for her." "But you just said, Kyuubi knows where she is," I said. "I'm not Kyuubi, and I'm just as in the dark as you were unless he decides to tell me." A pained expression swiftly crossed the blonde's face as he explained, "Hell, I didn't even know about the link until we had been wandering around snow for more than a year." No matter how fast it had gone by, Hinata had recognized her beloved's anguished look and knew she was the reason. "I apologize, Naruto. You are not Kyuubi, I know that. It's simply that. I mean." Hinata attempted to clarify her error. "Don't stress over it," the blonde said. "We should check on Yukiko right now." He gave Hinata a quick kiss before taking her hand and guiding her to the location where the clones had found Kyuubi's mate. Having listened to Neji's account of his daughters' lives with a heavy heart, Hiashi Hyuga had undoubtedly failed as a father, having neglected a great deal of their early years in favor of training them to be the epitome of the ideal Hyuga. "How does Hitori feel about the way I've handled our kids?" Neji paused his story as Hiashi pondered. "Neji, tell me how much you believe Hinata has improved under Kurenai based on a comparison of her skill level at the end of my training and her current level." The elder Hyuga asked with difficulty. Neji thought about the question for a moment before he sighed deeply and spoke. I'm sorry Hiashi. Sama, but I cannot answer that question. What do you mean that you are unable to respond? Hiashi replied, a little irritated by his nephew's apparent disobedience. I don't mean to offend Lord Hiashi in any way, but there is no way to respond to your question. Neji quickly clarified to the clan leader that although Lady Kurenai is in charge of the great majority of Lady Hinata's training, she is not in charge of her development as a ninja. Go on. Yes, all right. To the best of my knowledge, despite being a superb teacher, Lady Kurenai has never been able to inspire Lady Hinata to achieve excellence in her training. Someone else must get that credit. Hiashi's normally smooth brow had several creases to go with his narrowly focused eyes, making it obvious that he was getting tired of Neji's evasive explanation. I'll simplify and make it easier for you because it appears that you are either avoiding or confused by my question. The Hyuga head growled, making Neji sob. How much has Hinata improved in her training, and to whom does the credit for that training belong? Pardon me, Lord. Since you last trained her, Lady Hinata has made great progress. She is at least high Chunin or low Jonin, if I had to rate her skill level. There is no question in my mind that Naruto Uzumaki alone deserves all the credit for that improvement. Neji responded, anticipating that the elder Hyuga would become enraged. But instead of the explosion Neji had anticipated, the Hyuga genius saw Hiashi's face grow eerily calm before getting up from his chair and leaving the room, but not before saying something. Neji, thank you. That'll be it. The spirit's muffled cries reverberated throughout the mental landscape, and Kyuubi could do little more than reach out through their shared link to try to calm Yukiko's troubled mind. The voice of the Demon King dominated his beloved's thoughts, saying, My love, things are not as they seem, there is still hope but you must be patient. I was turned down by the girl. If your host's partner rejects the bonding, what hope do we have? I'm not supposed to say that. In an attempt to console Yukiko, Kyuubi answered, I can only tell you that the boy knows where you are and he and the girl are coming to speak with you. Therefore I would ask that you not do anything before they arrive. I will not bow down to her, my lord. Fearing Hinata's intentions for pursuing her, Yukiko resolutely declared, I love you with all of my heart, but I will not give up my pride to her. My lady, I wouldn't ever ask you to. I would still advise you to listen to her before acting hastily, though. After a few moments, the ancient spirit sighed deeply and spoke. As you desire, my dear. I'll pay attention to what she says. After a swift journey through the snow-covered forest, Hinata and Naruto arrived in Yukiko in record time. Although it was clear that the spirit was not particularly thrilled to see the lavender-eyed girl, Hinata boldly moved away from Naruto, hesitated for a brief moment, and then knelling with her face to the ground and speaking. Lady Yukiko. I sincerely apologize for any misunderstanding my poorly chosen words may have caused you earlier today, and I'll try my best to fix my error if you'll just give me a few minutes, Hinata said respectfully to Yukiko. Yukiko was taken aback by Hinata's readiness to prostrate herself, but she soon discovered that the selfless act of humility erased any animosity she had toward the girl. There is no justification for you to be humble in front of me, Lady Hinata. Since I was the one who started us on this path when we first met, I may be even more at fault than you. Before she spoke, Yukiko received an understanding smile from a standing Hinata. Regardless of how this journey began, we are here together now, and that is all that really matters. Agreed. The Snow Fox replied. Now that that is settled, I need to say what I should have said earlier, Hinata started. I'm viewed as a failure in my family, and I thought that for a long time, but I now know that to be untrue because of my pernicious people's understanding and support. I am aware of my many flaws, so I am still not conceited enough to think I am perfect. I am not the most attractive, intelligent, or strong kunoichi in our village. I don't possess any exceptional abilities or skills. I have accomplished everything I have through perseverance and hard work. Being your host is not something I consider myself to be worthy of. However, Hinata said solemnly, I would be honored to become one with you, Lady Yukiko, if you feel that I am someone you would want to bond with. When Hinata finished speaking, it seemed like everyone was waiting for Yukiko to respond. Why don't you respond, my love? Regarding the girl, have you changed your mind? Is there anything you don't like about her? Kyuubi questioned his life partner. No, my dear. I could not ask for a better host than Lady Hinata, the girl. Simply put, I'm starting to question whether it's appropriate to ask her to give up her life in order to strengthen our bond. Because you and Naruto had no other option, your lives are now inextricably linked. You are aware of the boy's suffering as a result of the joining. Is it appropriate for me to request that she endure the same stigma? My love, I can appreciate your hesitancy, but think about this. Lady Hinata is free to choose whether or not to bond with you. Any sacrifice she is asked to make will be one she is willing to make because she has chosen to bond with you. Ultimately, Hinata would never be able to go through the same traumatic life as Naruto. He had no one to love or care for him, so he was alone. When his burdens became too much for him to handle, he had nowhere to go for solace. But Hinata will have Naruto's affection and their friends' support, Kyuubi sagely suggested. It felt like an eternity had slowly passed before Yukiko looked at the expectant girl and said, even though the demon and spirit's mental conversation only lasted a moment to those watching from the outside. We have only known each other for 2 days, Lady Hinata. We have argued and fought at nearly every point during that time. Nevertheless, I think that we have gotten to know one another in a way that very few people can say, despite the conflict we have thrown ourselves into for the sake of the people we care about. I'm confident that the bonding would be very beneficial to both of us. Thus, Lady Hinata, it would be an honor for me to unite with you. After almost a month, practically all of the Leaf's people had been quietly escorted to safety, and Tsunade watched as the most recent group of civilians were led out of the village. The mission has been completed, Hokage. Sama. As Team Ebisu emerged behind the 5th, Konohamaru reported, our group has been delivered to Suna safely and without incident. Well done. Without ever really acknowledging the reporting team, Tsunade gave the order to head towards Hokage Tower, saying, take a few hours to rest, then relieve Sakura and her team on watch at the north gates. Ko, is everything really that bad? As she observed the village leader leaving, Moegi inquired. What do you mean, huh? In response, Konohamaru turned to face his lone female teammate. Have you not noticed the expression on her face? You heard the void in her voice, didn't you? She seems to have given up. As though she is aware that everything we have done in the last month has been a step toward our own downfall. Is the situation so dire that even the Hokage would surrender before the fight even started? Moegi inquired quietly. After pondering for a moment how to respond to her, Ko turned away from his team and went to Ichiraku's, where he called back with a broad smile. As though, after years of suffering under the hateful gaze of Konoha's people, Naruto silently thanked Kami for the woman in his arms. He had finally found a true companion in Hinata, who was everything he could have ever wanted and more. For the first time in his life, he was genuinely happy, and he never wanted to give up on that feeling. What are you contemplating? Hinata's little voice inquired softly. About you and the mistakes I've made. Errors? She asked, idly stroking the arm that held her tightly. As he started to speak, Naruto drew Hinata nearer. I wasted so many years convincing myself that it was best to avoid you. I always knew I was making the right decision. Because I was doing what was best for you, and I knew it for sure. However, I now realize my mistake. Who knows what might have happened if I had followed my heart instead of my head, he concluded, planting a gentle kiss on her lips. I won't deny that I wished things had gone differently, but who is to say that everything didn't work out as planned when you think about it? We grew stronger and wiser during our time apart. It boosted our self-esteem and helped us develop as people. If we had been together when we were younger, I don't know what kind of person I would have grown up to be. However, being separated helped shape who I am, and you accepted me for who I am. Hinata said, I wouldn't change that. You're correct, Haim. I only regret that it took me so long to give myself permission to recognize your emotions. Naruto, stop talking like that. Hinata started, we are together now and after tomorrow, as Naruto kissed her again before continuing. We'll be together forever. In contrast to Kyuubi's sealing into Naruto, Yukiko had spent 10 days preparing for the bonding with Hinata. Theirs would be a perfect bonding, enabling the two to have a true symbiotic relationship. Lady Hinata, I would like to ask you again before we start. Are you certain you understand what is going to happen? The full joining of one being to another is known as bonding. You will become everything I am, and I will become everything you are. Despite the fact that our minds will be different, we will still be aware of each other. Yukiko said this, giving Hinata one last opportunity to veer off course. Hinata drew closer to Naruto with unwavering resolve, and he acknowledged that this was her decision and her decision alone, even though he was worried about her welfare. Hinata started, I understand and I am. Before the sound of metal clanging and irate cries filled the room. Get away from her, bastard, as multiple kunia flew through the air in Naruto's direction, only to be knocked down before they could reach their target, the childlike voice yelled out. Naruto positioned himself between Hinata and the unidentified attackers, cursing himself for not being more alert and letting an apparent enemy approach so closely at such a critical moment. Yukiko promptly moved to his aid if necessary. Kid, the idiots have the audacity to assault our friends and us. Show them how wrong they are. Kyuubi let out a roar from his mental realm. The entire area was rapidly filled with the powerful aura of Kyuubi's and Naruto's chakra as the blonde got ready to launch a deadly counterattack, acknowledging his sensei's command. I'm not sure who you are, but you're going to die for what you tried to do here today. Using a series of hand signals, Naruto called out and yelled. Multiform Ascendant. Please don't kill her, Naruto. She's my sister. As she hurried to Naruto's side, Hinata screamed, causing him to stop using his jutsu. Naruto reluctantly followed Hinata's instructions, but he remained vigilant in case the woman in front of him decided to carry out her attack. Hanabi, get down. You have no right to assault a fellow soldier. Emmy yelled as she and the rest of Team 17 pulled up beside the frowning, combat ready young Hyuga. The leader has successfully reached the target. There appears to be some conflict between the two groups, though. What orders do you have? A large, green leather-clad man said. The person who was only identified as the leader held a long ivory spear and remarked, this could play out to our advantage. For now we will wait and see how this little reunion plays out. In unison, his three companions said, yes leader. Genin, could you please explain? Emmy questions her subordinate harshly. Naruto tried to calm herself before responding to her sensei, but Hanabi's hateful glare never left her. The fate that awaits Chan in Konoha is not one she deserves. She pointed accusingly at Naruto and said, not when that is the source of all our pain and suffering. He is a demon who has tricked my sister into thinking she is in love with him by playing on her tender side. She left the clan because of the demon's lies, and he is the only one who needs to make up for her loss of honor. It is my responsibility as a Hyuga member to murder him and put my sister back in her proper position within the clan. Everything will be fine once she is no longer under his influence. Let me do what needs to be done, please, sensei. As her fellow ninja watched in silent sympathy, Hanabi yelled. Knowing how much his beloved must be hurting, Hinata instinctively drew her closure as he tried to protect her from the pains of their current small world while listening to her sister's tirade and burying her head in Naruto's chest to hide her tears from the assembled shinobi. Hanabi-chan, is that how you truly feel? As she moved away from Naruto and looked at her sister, Hinata posed the question. Isn't that the truth? Did he not use his demonic influence to persuade you to support him? Why else would you follow the demon Bast? Hanabi started, but Hinata mercilessly hurried over and slammed her to the ground before she could finish. When Rokuro jumped to her defense after witnessing his teammate being attacked, he was confronted by the enormous snowfox's nose. I believe it would be best if we let Lady Hinata and her sister resolve this on their own, boy. Do you not? As she slowly withdrew from the Genin's shaking and fast nodding, Yukiko snarled. I apologize, Hanabi-chan. However, as Hinata looked sorrowfully at her younger sister, she said, I cannot stand by and allow you to continue speaking so disrespectfully of one I have sworn to protect. Would you rather choose him than your own family? Have you been so corrupted by his evil that you would betray those who care about you? As she stood clutching her injured left shoulder, the younger Hyuga posed the question. Hinata had known from the start that her decision to follow Naruto would have consequences, but she had somehow hoped that at least Hanabi would have been understanding. Now, it seemed that even that was too much to have hoped for, and it broke her heart to hear the hurt and anguish in her sister's voice. I had hoped you would have the fortitude to look past the narrow-mindedness that all too frequently seems to afflict some of our family members. Now I realize you weren't. Why do so many people in our family oppose change? Sister, tell me. Why is it illegal to embrace what we might discover outside our walls? Is being a Hyuga and desiring something beyond what the Hyuga can provide so wrong, Hanabi? I did indeed follow Naruto. I guess I did, in a way, desert the Hyuga. But not in the manner you seem to think. When you view the world in terms of right and wrong, you consider the Hyuga to be right and everyone else to be wrong. However, there is so much more to the world than the sum of right and wrong. There are a million different ways that people interact with their surroundings. Because I adore Naruto, I followed him. Does that imply that I have less love for you or our family members? It doesn't, of course. Hinata turned back to Naruto and said softly, it just means that I want more for myself than what our family can offer. Nice words, sibling. However, they are only words. In all honesty, you would rather be a despicable demon's whore than a respected member of our family. Hanabi spat indignantly. I can only imagine how hurt and angry you must be feeling right now, sister. I can therefore easily forgive you for what you said and did here today. But my empathy for your feelings does have its limits, Hinata remarked, never expressing how deeply Hanabi's remarks and demeanor had wounded her. However, this was Hinata's cross to bear, and he would reluctantly allow her to do so despite how much it hurt to watch her suffer, even if indirectly, because of him. Naruto watched the exchange between Hinata and Hanabi with a great deal of regret. even though he understood that Hinata had chosen to come with him for herself, and now that the consequences of that choice were before him, he could not help but feel guilty. Emmy called out, diverting attention from the sisters. "Kento, please attend to Hanabi's injuries." As he went to tend to his injured teammate, the young man answered, "Yes, sensei." Emmy had not taken her eyes off the elder genin since Hanabi had attacked him, and she had no illusions about the boy, the weight he carried, or the fact that, had Hinata not intervened, the immaculate landscape of the land of snow would have been littered with at least one, if not more, bodies. "For my subordinate's actions, I sincerely apologize." Emmy bowed to Naruto and the others and said, "She will be punished after we finish our mission and get back to the village." The Jonin. Sensei's blood chilled as Naruto said icily, "A mission, huh? I was beginning to wonder why a team from Konoha was way out here. May I inquire why you and your team would go this far into snow, or is your mission a secret?" She felt compelled to carefully consider her next words because of the way the blonde had spoken to her. Emmy took a scroll out of her pouch and gave it to Hinata, saying, "Naruto-san. Lady Tsunade order ourselves and 3 other teams to locate and deliver a message to Lady Hinata." Hinata took the scroll that was offered to her and appeared a little concerned. "Am I getting called back?" she inquired. "I do not know. Our orders were simply to deliver the scroll within the year. Failing that, we were to return to the village." The Jonin responded. Naruto's tone softened from the previous moments as he asked, "Wait, within the year? How long have you been looking for us?" Rokuro said, 11 months 20.1 days, from behind his sensei. Naruto realized right away that something was amiss. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Tsunade would never have committed 4 teams to deliver recall orders for a single shinobi. "Hinata, I think you had better open that scroll." Hinata wasted no time in releasing the seal that bound the scroll, only to have a second seal replace the first. As he studied the newly created seal, Naruto explained, "It's a blood seal. The first seal must have had a time limit. If the time limit was reached before the scroll was opened, then this new seal would be activated. Try releasing it, Hinata." The seal glowed briefly before failing to release when a small amount of her blood was swiped across the scroll. As he and Hanabi knelt behind their sensei, Kento questioned, "Shouldn't something have happened?" Hinata turned and presented the scroll to Naruto, saying, "It would have if the scroll was still meant for me. Lady Tsunade must have meant this for you, Naruto. Why else would she have included a seal that I couldn't open?" The blonde joked nervously as he released the blood seal, only to become unusually quiet as he read its contents. "Grandma Tsunade must really be in it deep if she's going to this extent just to get me a message." The faces of the current and former Hokages guarded Konohagakure from a distance as its few surviving residents went about their daily lives in blissful ignorance of the mayhem that would soon arrive at their gates. Madara Uchiha said coldly, "Riku, inform all commanders that we will launch our attack on the leaf in 24 hours. As the room echoed with his master's emotionless laughter, Riku answered, "It will be done, my lord." Naruto read the contents of the scroll without showing any emotion. The typically vivacious shinobi's sudden lack of passion was oddly frightening to those who knew him best. Hinata began to ask, "Naruto, is everything all right?" but was interrupted by a shrill scream. Naruto had been so engrossed in the scroll that he had only dimly realized Hinata was addressing him before the sound of a scream brought him back to reality. Before settling on the woman in front of him, cerulean eyes swiftly scanned the area for the cause of the commotion. He said softly, "Hinata?" as the sight before him caused his logical mind to crumble. Just before Hinata's spear, skewered body fell to the ground and a pool of blood surrounded her, she said, "I love you." Her lavender eyes met azure. Shouting from those closest to Naruto could be heard. Once they had completed their mission, he could feel the ones who had started the chaos running back into the forest. The loudest scream came from the Kyuubi's voice, but it was only a bothersome hum in the back of his mind. The world of Naruto was frozen. Everything and everyone he cared about became trapped in a recurring cycle of events that started and ended with the 3 simple words, "I love you." The words kept repeating until his mind finally flashed and the image of the person who had said them suddenly came into focus. Before he screamed and the entire world shuddered in terror, he whispered, "Hinata." It was the rebirth of the Demon King.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.